Chapter 3881. As expected, after Yiqing Luo nodded in response to Gu Zixi words, Pei Xing heaved a sigh of relief. He felt much more relaxed. Seeing Pei Xing's reaction, Yiqing Luo felt more and more that she was really like a form teacher. Moreover, her aura was 2.8 meters and she could kill people with just one look. Forget it. If Pei Xing wanted to be nervous, so be it. Anyway, he wasn't the one who was nervous. Yiqing Luo glanced at the two customers who were listening to their conversation with their ears pricked up. Then, he looked at Pei Xing, raised his eyebrows, and reminded him, the business of treasure gathering has improved. If you want to hold an auction, are you sure you have extra time? It wasn't easy to organize an auction. In particular, only he and Gu Zixi were busy at the treasures exchange hall. If he wanted to hold a successful auction, he would need at least 10 days to half a month of preparation time. However, the Huangfu clan only gave him 3 days to consider. If he chose to stay in the land, this auction was naturally not a problem. However, if he chose to return to the Heaven Realm, now that he had made so many deals, at that time, how could they still be in charge of the auction? The problem which Yiqing Luo mentioned, Pei Xing really hadn't thought about it. Instantly, his eyes widened in astonishment as he looked at Yiqing Luo. He looked at Pei Xing's expression. Yiqing Luo could roughly guess it. Pei Xing was more inclined to follow old man Huangfu to the Heaven Realm from the bottom of his heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have revealed such a shocked expression. But that's true. For Pei Xing, who had lost all his family members after witnessing his father drown himself in the river, Pei Xing's heart sank. His family was really his biggest weakness. Even if he knew it was a tiger's den. However, he couldn't help but want to give it a try. This was human nature and a very normal way of thinking. I actually forgot such an important thing. Gu Zixi's pretty face paled. I was too happy to see so many customers coming to the treasures exchange hall. I didn't think too much about it. She immediately stood up, ran over to the counter, and brought over the list of names she had recorded. Since yesterday, I have already booked at least 400 people. What should I do? Pei Xing stared blankly at the booklet that Gu Zixi was flipping through. A trace of pain and entanglement surfaced on his face. Could it be, this was the will of the heavens? Even the heavens felt that, should he stay in the land? Pei Xing's thoughts were too obvious. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and pressed down the booklet that Gu Zixi was flipping through. Both of them turned to look at her. Yiqing Luo took the booklet from Gu Zixi's hand, closed it and pressed it on the table. She looked at Pei Xing calmly with a pair of charming eyes that didn't contain a hint of a smile. That invisible pressure. Immediately, Pei Xing became nervous again. Yiqing Luo pressed on the booklet, her voice was very calm and light, without much emotion. Why do you feel that it's hard to choose? This kind of thing is easy to resolve, isn't it? But it happened. She spoke in a calm tone. On the contrary, it made them feel even more pressured. That was what Pei Xing thought. His handsome face turned slightly pale. Gu Zixi, who was standing to one side, finally understood what Pei Xing meant by a powerful aura. This kind of aura, if placed on a normal person, would not be able to withstand it. Most of them would be so scared that their legs would go soft, right? Chapter 3882. Pei Xing's expression turned blank when he heard Yiqing Luo's question. His brows creased tightly into a bundle. Towards Yiqing Luo's question, he didn't know how to answer. His mind was in a mess. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she continued to ask, since you've already booked so many customers, you need to think of a way to deal with it, isn't it? Pei Xing slowly lowered his head, his face filled with pain and confusion. Seeing that he didn't reply, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile. Only her laughter was mixed with some ridicule. Why not? Let me give you an idea. Although he felt that Yiqing Luo's laughter was a little strange, and there was an inexplicable thorn in his heart. But, hearing Yiqing Luo's words, Pei Xing still swiftly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo. The moment he raised his head, he met with Yiqing Luo's eyes, which seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. That pair of deep and serene eyes were very black. It was that kind of extreme black. It was obviously that kind of seductive eyes. But it made one's heart tremble with respect and fear. Why don't you just throw away the mess that is treasure gathering and just walk away from it? Anyway, you're someone who is going to Heaven Realm, so it doesn't matter how this place turns into, isn't it? These people came to treasure gathering, it's because you're a branch relative of the Huangfu family. Even if you leave with the Huangfu family, leaving this mess behind, I think these people will not blame you. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she propped her chin as her eyes curved as she looked at him. Between her brows, she was obviously smiling. But Pei Xing sensed an eerie chill from that smile. The two customers who were registering by the side. Could she care about them a little? They were still present. Was it really all right to tell them their purpose of coming like there was no one else around? No. No way. She almost blurted it out. Pei Xing's eyes widened as he shook his head hard. Absolutely not. Treasure Gathering Trading Hall is my father's blood and sweat. 5 years ago, my father was framed by Zhongqing Trading Hall and ruined the reputation of treasure gathering. Now, treasure gathering has finally returned to everyone's sight. I absolutely cannot let treasure gathering's reputation be tarnished. Throw away this mess and leave or something. How could he possibly do that? Yiqing Luo smiled. This time, there was a different gentleness to her smile. She was still holding her chin. He was in the same position as before. It was just that the aura emitted from his body was slightly restrained. Since you feel that this method is not feasible, then, what are you going to do? Yiqing Luo asked with a smile. Pei Xing fell silent again. Yiqing Luo didn't urge him to reply at all. A moment later, in this strange atmosphere, Pei Xing moved his mouth and softly spat out a few words. I will stay in the land. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and continued to smile, no regrets. Pei Xing wanted to say that he didn't regret it. But when the words reached his mouth, it was as if something was stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit them out no matter what. Don't you regret it? He didn't know. He really didn't know. Yiqing Luo laughed out loud at this moment. The hand she used to support her chin had already changed to the back of her hand to support her temples, looking very lazy. You don't answer, but you already have the answer in your heart, don't you? Yiqing Luo's straightforwardness made Pei Xing's face turn slightly pale. He clenched his fists, opened and closed them again. Chapter 3883. Pei Xing pursed her lips tightly. It was impossible to tell what expression Zhang Xian had on his face. Yiqing Luo shut her mouth again. She was still calm and didn't urge him to answer. He was using this 8-meter-tall aura to oppress him. After the silence of half an incense stick of time, Pei Xing seemed to have mustered up his courage. He clenched his fists so tightly that blue veins appeared on his fingertips. He plucked up his courage as he raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo, as his voice was slightly trembling as he spoke. I'm thinking, to discuss with old Master Huang Fu, to wait till the treasures trading house's auction is held, then I'll go to Heaven Realm with him. After finishing this sentence, Pei Xing let out a long sigh. Following that, he looked at Yiqing Luo anxiously. He was like a primary school student checking his teacher's homework. It was as if he was afraid that he had answered the question wrongly. Yiqing Luo slowly straightened her body. He was no longer as lazy as before. A pair of extremely dark and enchanting eyes stared straight into his eyes. Pei Xing immediately tensed up. His hand subconsciously clenched his sleeves. Until, Pucci. The sound broke the increasingly heavy atmosphere. Pei Xing looked at Yiqing Luo in a daze. She smiled. And he was smiling very brightly. It was not the kind of laughter that would make one's hair stand on end. Pei Xing was dazed by Yiqing Luo's smile. Yiqing Luo just smiled like that, and even raised her brows while smiling as she opened her mouth. Continue speaking. Say what? Pei Xing was dumbfounded. But seeing Yiqing Luo's smile, he subconsciously continued, I think, if we talk about it, old Master Huangfu will agree. I will try my best to convince him. I think this is the best way to deal with it. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile. Now do you feel that saying out what you want to say isn't as difficult as you imagined? Pei Xing was startled. Yiqing Luo replied, do you feel much better after saying it out? You don't feel that much pressure anymore. Pei Xing's pupils constricted and reddened. His eyes were filled with gratitude. Only now did he understand. Yiqing Luo had been asking aggressively, not because she was making things difficult for him. Instead, it was guiding him. Guide him to make the choice he wanted the most in his heart. Guide him and deal with things that should be his to decide. Guide him and begin to grow. Yiqing Luo patted his shoulder lightly. Remember how you feel now. In future, don't reveal a dazed and helpless expression no matter what happens. This will give others a chance to take advantage of you and also make Zishi worry for you. Yiqing Luo gently patted his shoulder, don't worry about me. Pei Xing nodded vigorously. He then looked at Gu Zishi, who was beside him, and squeezed her hand. The two looked at each other and smiled. At this moment, ha ha ha, suddenly, a deep and steady laughter came from afar. In the next instant, a figure appeared in the hall of the treasure-gathering hole. When he saw who it was, the two guests at the side immediately felt their legs go soft, and they knelt on the ground. The people sitting around the chairs also stood up. Old Master Huangfu. The guest spoke with a trembling voice, filled with excitement and fear. Yiqing Luo took a look at the smiling Huangfu Zhentian. She winked at Old Lai. Lao Lai immediately dropped the brush in his hand, picked up a guest with each hand, and walked toward the door. After that, he threw the two guests out. He clapped his hands and closed the door with a paw. The hundreds of people from various powerhouses who were still queuing. What situation was this? They had queued for so long. Chapter 3884. However, no matter how the people outside talked or how they knocked on the door, the tightly shut door did not respond at all. Thinking about how Yiqing Luo and the rest had just entered. Later on, it seemed that even the big boss from the heaven realm had entered, even if everyone had doubts and complaints in their hearts. Even so, he did not dare to force his way in. They could only choose, they could either leave or wait patiently in the queue. Within the treasure-gathering hole. Because of Huangfu Zhentian's appearance, the relaxed atmosphere from before instantly became heavy. Even Pei Xing, compared to when he saw Yiqing Luo, was even more uneasy as he stood ramrod straight with both hands hanging by his side. The others frowned slightly and looked at him without blinking. Huangfu Zhentian didn't feel that his appearance had affected anything at all. He laughed heartily as he walked towards Pei Xing. Because of this smile, his solemn and dignified face looked a little benevolent. He looked at Pei Xing with a gentle gaze. He walked up to Pei Xing and patted Pei Xing's shoulder. It was just this action. Pei Xing was so shocked that his body tensed up. He was incomparably stiff. Even his breathing was so nervous that it was extremely slow. Huang Fuzhintian seemed as if he completely didn't notice Pei Xing's nervousness. He didn't feel that the atmosphere in the room was very heavy. With a smile on his face, he patted Pei Xing's shoulder and said, "Good lad, grandfather heard everything you said just now. You promised to follow grandfather back to the Huangfu clan, but grandfather took it seriously." Pei Xing's expression became even more complicated when he called him grandfather. Coupled with Huang Fuzhintian's benevolence that was completely different from yesterday and the intimate action of patting his shoulder, Huang Fuzhintian's expression changed. This shocked Pei Xing to the point that he was excited, and terrified. His heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of his throat. "Brat, your friend did the right thing. The best way to deal with this matter is to find a way to solve it yourself." Huang Fuzhintian patted Pei Xing again before retracting his hand as he looked at Yiqing Luo with a face full of smiles. "Miss Yi, many thanks for guiding this fellow to find the right way." Yiqing Luo's lips curled. "In that case, you've agreed to Ah Xing's condition." A wisp of a bright light flashed past Huang Fuzhintian's dignified and wise eyes. It was gone in a flash. But it didn't escape Yiqing Luo's eyes. Subsequently, Huang Fuzhintian glanced at Pei Xing with deep meaning and said, "That depends on how this kid convinces me." Pei Xing tensed up again. He was slightly dazed by Huang Fuzhintian's intentionally intimate attitude. He originally thought that Huang Fuzhintian would agree readily. However, he didn't expect Huang Fuzhintian to say this. However, Yiqing Luo's smile grew even wider as she nodded in agreement. "What old Master Huang Fu said is right, I feel the same way too." The old man and the young man looked at each other and smiled. They then turned to look at Pei Xing at the same time. Pei Xing could only feel a tinge of coldness rising from his back amidst his anxiety and fear. Suddenly, a sharp and hurried voice sounded, "No, you can't. Grandfather, you can't agree so easily." Then, Huangfu and the other two broke into the room. Huangfu Fengyan pounced over and hugged Huang Fuzhintian's hand while biting her lower lip tightly. "Grandfather, Pei Xing has Huangfu family's blood in him. Bringing him back to Huangfu family is already his grace. Grandfather has already taken a step back and allowed him to bring a useless lowly lady back to Huangfu family. He still had many requests." Chapter 3885. As Huangfu Fengyan was speaking, she shot a sinister glare towards Gu Zixi direction. But when she looked towards Huang Fuzhintian, her beautiful face was replaced with sincerity, as though every single word was for the sake of the Huangfu family. The moment the three of them appeared, they surrounded Huang Fuzhintian in the middle. Evidently, they had witnessed everything that had happened earlier. On seeing their old master and Yiqing Luo smiling at each other, as though their relationship was extremely intimate, they finally couldn't hold it in any longer. They absolutely could not let old master develop any interest towards that slut Yiqing Luo. Otherwise, if they had old master's support, wouldn't Yiqing Luo be able to do whatever she wanted? Huangfu Fengyan was thinking furiously in her heart. Suddenly her eyes went blurry. A black shadow flashed past. Her body was locked down by an enormous force. "Pa!" A crisp slap resounded in the hall. Huangfu Fengyan could only feel her ears buzzing. Her cheek was burning in pain. It made her realize what had happened. She raised her hand and covered her cheek, which was slapped. She stared fiercely at the person who made a move on her. This stare met with a young lady's scornful gaze. The young lady in front of her was dressed in a blazing red robe, peerlessly beautiful. A head of silky black hair cascaded down onto that slender shoulder. There wasn't a single piece of decoration on her, simple yet elegant. Her entire person was filled with a lazy, undisciplined temperament. However, the young lady's lips curled into a faint smile. That unattainable peerless elegance between her brows made one feel intimidated with just one look. Huangfu Fengyan was the same. She only raised her head to take a look. Even the question about being slapped was stuck in her throat. Who are you talking about, lowly woman? Yiqing Luo raised her chin as her voice was icy cold. Huangfu Fengtian was agitated by this cold words as she shuddered, as though she suddenly woke up. Half of her swollen red face instantly emitted an intense pain. Her eyes were fuming with anger as she pointed towards Gu Zixi and Yiqing Luo in a flustered and exasperated manner. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the both of you. Oh. Yiqing Luo calmly replied with a word. His tone was so noble and aloof. Huangfu Fengyan's heart was filled with rage, but when she heard this her face turned pale. Puchi, a chuckle could be heard. Gu Zixi covered her mouth, her eyes crinkling as she smiled. Her pretty face was full of ridicule and ridicule. Huangfu Fengyan's eyes seemed to have been pierced. A conversation suddenly popped up in his mind. Lowly woman, who are you talking about? You. Wasn't she calling herself a lowly woman? Her face instantly turned red. Her usually beautiful and arrogant face now had a sinister and terrifying expression on it. Damn slut. How dare he humiliate her like this? Grandfather. Huangfu Fengyan was angered to the point that her eyes turned red and tears gushed out. They are simply bullying people intolerably. Going too far. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly as she raised her long arm and hooked onto Gu Zixi shoulder. Following that, her slender body seemed to be boneless as she leaned lazily on Gu Zixi. Her eyes were filled with smiles, but there wasn't a single trace of a smile in her eyes. You're just a lowly woman, what right do you have to bully my Zixi? I'm afraid you don't know that if it wasn't for Zixi, the Xing you see now would be a corpse. Although her words were said while looking at Huangfu Fengyan. Chapter 3886. Huangfu Trio's expressions were extremely ugly. Especially Huangfu Fengyan, after she heard this sentence, her eyes were bloodshot. Lowly woman. She was the dignified Huangfu family's fourth miss, how could she be compared to a woman from the Earth realm? Damn Yiqing Luo. She was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Huangfu Qifei's gentle eyes flashed past a glint. After taking a look at Huangfu Zhintian, he took quick steps towards Huangfu Fengyan as he held on to Huangfu Fengyan's shoulder with one hand, bringing her trembling body to the back of Huangfu Zhintian. Fengyan, grandfather has finally found cousin Pei Xing, this is a joyous occasion, don't mess around. Huangfu Qifei's voice was very gentle, with a sense of pacification. Huangfu Fengyan bit her lower lip tightly, as the blood-red color in her eyes had not dispersed. But it had quietened down. Huangfu Zhintian's white brows creased tightly. His expression was unfriendly as he looked at Huangfu Fengyan unhappily, before looking at Yiqing Luo. His tightly creased brows creased even tighter. Miss Yi. He pondered for a moment and spoke in a grave tone. Fengyan is too rash and offended you and this Miss Gu, but Fengyan is after all our Huangfu family's 4,000 gold, will Miss Yi please consider carefully before you make a move next time. This matter was indeed Huangfu Fengyan's problem. Huangfu Zhintian couldn't very well accuse Yiqing Luo's actions. But Huangfu Fengyan was after all his granddaughter, and a member of his Huangfu family. If she was so easily bullied by others, wouldn't that make others look down on Huangfu family? Especially when it was in the lower realm. But for Huangfu Zhintian, based on his status, indeed, he had lowered himself to a very low level. His meaning was very clear. He gave her face, and hoped that she would give Huangfu family some face on his account, and give Huangfu family some face. This matter of beating up Huangfu Fengyan would end like this. Yiqing Luo naturally heard the meaning behind Huangfu Zhintian's words. She raised her brows as she smiled and nodded, all right, next time before I make a move, I will definitely inform you. Huang Fu Jintian. After talking for so long, you still want to fight? Yiqing Luo shrugged her shoulders as she spread out her hands helplessly. You've seen it for yourself. It's not that I'm willing to take action, but some people are itching for a beating and insist on coming over to be beaten. Old Master also knows that for a kind-hearted person like me, how would I bear to reject someone's fervent request, right? You. How would Huang Fu Fengyan not hear the sarcasm in Yiqing Luo's words as she gritted her teeth and stared at Yiqing Luo? He hadn't even raised his hand and pointed at Yiqing Luo. However, he was forced back by Huang Fu Jintian's gaze. Yiqing Luo didn't even spare Huang Fu Fengyan a glance. Instead, he pushed Gu Zixi in front of the old man. Then, with a calm gaze, he looked at the old man and enunciated each word clearly. Don't think that your heaven realm is so good, or that the Huangfu family is so good. Everyone here is very clear on how difficult it is for a large family to survive. Don't say anything. Pei Xing and Zixi have gone to the Huangfu clan. You can take care of them. When we really go to the Huangfu clan, you won't have the time to ask them. Whereas Zixi has her own power in the earth realm, able to call the shots. Why must she give up everything and follow him to the Huangfu clan? To face all the dangers and fear, all those unknown things. Do you think she's stupid? She gave up everything in the earth realm and followed Oxing to the heaven realm, just because she loves Oxing. Chapter 3887. Yiqing Luo's straightforward words made Gu Zixi face turn red. She was pushed in front of old Master Huang. Hearing Yiqing Luo praising herself in various ways, she was even more embarrassed. She didn't even dare to raise her head to look at old Master Huang. Especially when she heard Yiqing Luo saying, to have your own force, to call the wind and summon the rain, her expression changed slightly. She had not expected, Yiqing Luo had already seen through it. But, to tell the truth, her so-called force, as compared to the Huangfu family, was indeed a world of difference. She wanted to move away. But her back was blocked by Yiqing Luo's hand. Soon after, the girl's cold yet extremely clear voice drilled into one's heart. So, Zixi doesn't owe your Huangfu family anything, but Pei Xing owes Zixi. Her brows rose as her cold voice called out Pei Xing's name. Ah Xing, am I right? Pei Xing was stunned by the 2-meter-8 aura once again. Especially when he heard Yiqing Luo's words. He was even more dazed. The gaze he used to look at Gu Zixi was filled with heartache and guilt. So he hurriedly nodded his head vigorously. Even withstanding the pressure from Huangfu Jintian, he strode to Gu Zixi's side and held her hand. Zixi. Sorry. And, really thank you. Willing to give up everything for him. Such a beautiful lady. He would use his entire life to repay her. Pei Xing took the initiative to get closer and held her hand. This made Gu Zixi's anxious heart instantly calm down. To her, Pei Xing was her calming pill. As long as Pei Xing's feelings towards her and his heart towards her no longer wavered, she had nothing to fear. Her originally apprehensive and slightly bashful blushing face was now filled with a blissful and sweet smile. Her and Pei Xing's hands were intertwined tightly as her eyes were filled with tenderness. Yiqing Luo looked on from the side as her lips curled into a satisfied smile. To make Pei Xing take the initiative to walk to Gu Zixi's side at this moment, to give her comfort and warmth. This was Pei Xing's biggest improvement. As expected. As long as it was related to love, it could give a person a huge amount of courage. But the sweet atmosphere between Pei Xing and Gu Zixi. In her or Grandpa Xing's eyes, it was sweet. But in the eyes of Huangfu and the other two, it was extremely glaring. Especially looking at the smile on Yiqing Luo's lips. Huangfu Fengyan's eyeballs were about to pop out. Anger surged in his heart. She couldn't help but sneer. Her voice was sharp because of her anger. You make it sound nice. What do you mean by your own forces? What do you mean by giving up everything? To put it bluntly, aren't you just trying to curry favor with the powerful? Using Pei Xing to climb up the ranks of the Huangfu family. What kind of power can rival our Huangfu clan? Feng Yan. Huangfu Feng Yan spoke rudely once more and completely infuriated Huangfu Jintian. Huangfu Jintian shouted out fiercely, and the gaze he shot at Huangfu Feng Yan was filled with a stern warning. Huangfu Feng Yan pouted and lowered her head. Without waiting for Huangfu Jintian to apologize to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had already burst out laughing. Between his brows, there was a lazy and elegant expression. However, the words that came out of his mouth were extremely cold. Old Master, you've seen it for yourself. It's not that I don't want to give Old Master face. But her voice sounded like she was laughing. Laughing so much that it made one's hair stand on end. Following that, her vision slowly shifted towards Huangfu Feng Yan. The smile on the corners of her lips became even thicker. Chapter 3888. Huangfu Feng Yan's face instantly sunk as the murderous intent in her eyes surfaced. As though she couldn't wait to rush forward and tear Yiqing Luo into pieces. Facing such a gaze, Yiqing Luo totally didn't care about it. Anyway, with old Master Huangfu around, Huangfu Feng Yan had no chance to make a move. Moreover, old Lai, Gue Wu and the rest were around. She was afraid that Huangfu Feng Yan wouldn't make a move. As long as Huangfu Feng Yan dared to make a move, she would have the reason to. Let Huangfu Feng Yan die without any hesitation. Huangfu Feng Yan, if you dare to say another word, in future no matter what occasion you are to stay in the Huangfu family obediently and not take a step out. Huangfu Jintian was obviously infuriated by Huangfu Feng Yan as his eyes widened. Was he going to ground her? Huangfu Feng Yan looked at her grandfather in disbelief. But when she met her grandfather's eyes which were filled with anger, she shuddered as she hung her head down, not daring to say another word. Yiqing Luo expressed that there was still a little bit of disappointment. If they could create a ruckus, she would be able to properly teach Huangfu Feng Yan a lesson. TSK. Looking at Yiqing Luo shaking her head and sighing uninterestedly. As astute as Huangfu Jintian, how could he not see through her thoughts? Huangfu Jintian's eyes darkened and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Very soon, his face lit up with a generous and benevolent yet dignified smile. I know that Lady Gu is a good lady. Even though I haven't spent much time with Lady Gu, I know that for you to be so unswervingly devoted to this boy when he had nothing left, you must truly be treating him with sincerity. No matter how big Miss Gu's influence in the Earth realm is, this is after all created by Miss Gu using her own hands and ability, so this is worthy of our respect. I am also very clear that Miss Gu put down everything in the Earth realm and followed this silly kid to the Heaven realm, to a foreign unknown place. How much courage did you have? I believe in Pei Xing's foresight and choice, and I believe that I am not so old that my eyes are failing me. Huangfu Jintian said one sentence after another, in a sincere manner. It didn't seem like it, he was just casually saying it. Gu Zixi eyes reddened as she tried to understand his words. Huangfu Jintian smiled at Gu Zixi. Young lady, thank you so much. Gu Zixi covered her mouth. Nothing was more touching than this. She didn't care if others could understand her or misunderstand her. It was enough for her to obtain the approval of Pei Xing's elders. Huangfu Jintian then looked at Pei Xing and said, "Stinking brat, treat your young lady well. She is a good lady." Pei Xing looked at Gu Zixi and intertwined their fingers. A rare look of determination appeared on the man's handsome face. I came here today just to see you, and also to deepen your impression of your grandfather. Now that I'm done, I'll take my leave first. I won't disturb you youngsters. He stepped forward and patted Pei Xing's shoulder before patting Gu Zixi shoulder. With a smile, his figure flickered and he disappeared from the hole. Only the remnants of his majestic voice still lingered in the air. And the three of you go back to the heavenly realm. Night. Huangfu Fengyan, who was scolded by Huangfu Zhentian, was lying on the bed with half of her face still swollen. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists, pounding the bed with force. Damn Yi Qing Luo! You slut! I want you to die! She angrily pounded the bed with force. Fengyan. A slightly dissatisfied voice was heard in the wind. Chapter 38-89. Hearing that person's voice, Huangfu Fengyan's ferocious expression froze. She immediately looked up. She saw the man standing by the bed, staring at her with a dark expression. Huangfu Fengyan immediately sat up on the bed and shifted her gaze away from the man at a loss. She nervously called out, "Third brother." That's right. The person who came was the third young master of the Huangfu family, Huangfu Qifei. Huangfu Qifei stared straight at her. His usually warm eyes now contained a bit of coldness. Especially after seeing her lower her head. The disdain in his eyes was even more obvious. Huangfu Qifei didn't speak for a long time. Huangfu Fengyan's heart was in a mess. From time to time, she would glance at Huangfu Qifei's eyes. Facing her third brother. She had always been in awe and fear. She wasn't even this nervous in front of her brother, Huangfu Dongyu. Huangfu Qifei clearly looked gentler and gentler than the others. But Huangfu Fengyan was clear. Under the gentle mask of her third brother, there was a hidden cruelty. You've provoked that woman time and time again. Can't you learn to be obedient? Huangfu Qifei finally spoke. He let out a sigh. Even the sigh of a refined and elegant young master was so gentle. His knees were on the side of the bed. Huangfu Fengyan's body trembled. She instinctively wanted to retreat. However, her chin was caught by the man's outstretched hand. Huangfu Qifei sat by the bed. He hooked her chin with one hand and moved closer. His face was as gentle as jade, and he was handsome and refined. There was even a hint of a smile in his eyes. Huangfu Qifei sighed lightly and said, "Look, your face is hurting, isn't it?" Huangfu Fengyan felt as if a poisonous snake had slid across her face. Her pupils shrank nervously. Huangfu Qifei smiled warmly. "It's okay. You'll get used to it sooner or later. Fengyan, with the situation today, our days in the future will be more difficult than now." Huangfu Fengyan was forced to meet his gaze. Looking at the gentleness in the man's eyes, she trembled. Even her lips were trembling. What habit? No. Grandfather won't. Don't you see the situation clearly? Huangfu Qifei sighed as he shook his head, Pei Xing, that fellow now has a backer. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo's performance is very obvious, she is determined to help Pei Xing. You know very well that the power behind Yi Qing Luo is not just an overlord. A wisp of a cold light flashed past the depths of Huangfu Qifei's warm eyes, and it vanished in a fleeting manner. He then looked at Huangfu Fengyan. The emotions in his eyes had returned to the gentleness of a young master. After Pei Xing returns to Huangfu family, on account of the overlord and those powerhouses behind Yi Qing Luo, they will definitely give Pei Xing a very high position. By then, how do you think Pei Xing will treat us? He paused slightly, his fingers caressing Huang Fengyan's face, his eyes filled with heartache. My pitiful Fengyan, such a beautiful face, how could she be so ruthless? After Pei Xing returns to the Huangfu family, what should we do? Huangfu Qifei's voice, expression, and actions. They were all heartache and helpless towards Huangfu Fengyan. However, Huangfu Fengyan listened to his words. She only felt her body turning icy cold. She shivered as her little hands clenched tightly onto Huangfu Qifei's sleeve, as though she was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. Chapter 3890. So, what does Feng Yan want to do? Huangfu Qifei held her hand instead and patted her back lightly like a big brother, comforting her with a warm voice. I want to. Huangfu Fengyan stiffly leaned into Huangfu Qifei's embrace, her eyes bursting with intense killing intent. I want him dead. Who do you want to die? Huangfu Qifei smiled warmly and slightly tightened his grip on Huangfu Fengyan's hand. Pei Sheng. She would never allow anyone to affect her position in the Huangfu family. Pei Sheng was just a lowly branch disciple. A piece of trash that didn't even have half of the Huangfu family's blood in him. She would never let Pei Sheng have any chance to climb over her head. Good girl. Huangfu Qifei smiled lightly as he placed his hand on Huangfu Fengyan's head, and his voice became even lower and gentler. Just do as you want to do. No matter what, third brother will always be behind you and shield you from the wind and rain. Huangfu Fengyan's eyelashes trembled as she clasped her hands together. Then, he hugged Huangfu Qifei tightly. Third brother, good girl. Huangfu Qifei lightly patted her head and shoulders. His voice was still so magnetic and pleasant to listen to. However, that refined and gentle face. What emerged was a chilling ruthlessness. Especially that pair of extremely bright eyes in the dark night, flowing with treacherous cold light. Within the treasures gathering exchange house. Because there were many guests on the list. Yiqing Luo and the rest also stayed behind to help tidy up the treasures. Until it was almost midnight. Yiqing Luo and the rest then prepared to leave. Pei Sheng and Gu Zishi walked them to the door. After greeting, Yiqing Luo was about to leave. Pei Sheng hesitated for a while before he quickly walked to Yiqing Luo's side and whispered, Ah Luo, I still have something to tell you. Ever since Pei Sheng sent her out, his gaze had drifted over her body from time to time. Yiqing Luo also guessed that Pei Sheng had something to tell her. She didn't expose him because she wanted Pei Sheng to take the initiative to mention it. So Yiqing Luo wasn't surprised at all, only allowing Gue Wu and the rest to make a move first. Gue Wu and the others walked far away. Pei Sheng pouted and said softly, Today, in front of old Master Huangfu, thank you, if Yiqing Luo wasn't around. The old man's arrival and the trio's arrival. It would definitely overwhelm him and Gu Zishi. Especially that group of three, he continued to humiliate Gu Zishi. If he was angered, he would only go crazy and argue with those three people. By then, old Master Shen's impression of Zishi would be even worse. I'm just speaking the truth. Yiqing Luo took a look at Gu Zishi's direction as her lips curled, so you should really treat Zishi well. If there's a lady who is willing to give up everything for you, then that means that she really loves you, so don't let Zishi down. I know. At the mention of Zishi, the light in Pei Sheng's eyes became brighter and more determined. I won't let her down. Yiqing Luo smiled. Pei Sheng continued, Actually, I have another question, Yiqing Luo asked. Pei Sheng lowered his eyes and quickly raised them to look at her. Judging from old Master Huangfu's attitude today, he should have agreed to let me hold the auction of the treasure-gathering auction, right? After asking this question, Pei Sheng immediately lowered his head, feeling extremely apprehensive. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as she asked in reply, What do you think? I think, yes. Pei Sheng nodded. Chapter 3891. Pei Sheng's thoughts were exposed and his face flushed red. He indeed meant it this way. But there was no need to be so direct. Yiqing Luo laughed when she heard that. But the laughter made Pei Xing feel a little guilty. He stiffened his body, and as he raised his head, he clenched his fists and whispered, "Old master, he seems to be testing me. That feeling makes me breathless." "Indeed, he is testing you." Yiqing Luo raised her brows and nodded seriously. "You're a grandson who is stranded outside, and he personally came to bring you back to Huangfu family. He must be bearing a huge pressure. He naturally wants to test you, whether you have the qualification to become a member of Huangfu family." Pei Xing's face turned pale in an instant. Large-scale families are survival of the fittest. This is the norm and also the reality. Yiqing Luo was very straightforward. "With your character, if you go to Huangfu family, I'm afraid you'll be in their hands. If you really want to take root in Huangfu family and protect Zixi, then you must make yourself stronger." Her expression was very calm. Even that pair of upturned eyes seemed extremely calm. Pei Xing, on the other hand, could tell from those extremely dark eyes that the young girl was very serious. She was teaching him the way to survive in a large family clan at high speed. As for Old Master's test, what kind of results you want will depend on your own performance. Yiqing Luo still left the choice in his own hands. Pei Xing looked at Yiqing Luo in a daze. After a long time, he slowly lowered his head. "I know." His voice was very soft. But she could still hear the change in his tone. "Thank you, Ah Luo." Yiqing Luo waved her hand and looked at the few of them who were so far away that they could not be seen. "Think carefully on how to convince Old Master. I'll make a move first, you guys rest early too." Pei Xing didn't urge her to stay. After the two of them said their goodbyes, Yiqing Luo chased after the few of them. After running for an entire street, she didn't see any signs of them. Yiqing Luo cursed silently, "A bunch of heartless fellows. They actually didn't wait for me." Since she couldn't catch up, she might as well slow down her footsteps. Just as she was about to leave, her ears suddenly twitched sensitively. A haze immediately appeared in her long and narrow eyes. The expression on his face changed in an instant. "Who are you?" She looked warily at the wall in front of her. Just now, he had vaguely sensed a slight fluctuation coming from there. Someone, following her. "Chi!" An almost inaudible whooshing sound of air was extremely clear in the silent night. The moonlight shone down. It reflected the tall and imposing figure standing on the wall. The cold moonlight poured down. It made her look like a fairy from the moon, quiet and elegant like cold jade. When he saw that person, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased as she looked at him in a daze. Zhu Wuxian. Wasn't this person before him Zhu Wuxin? Ever since the auction's array was broken, she had not seen Zhu Wuxin. Based on Zhu Wuxian's ability, Yiqing Luo wasn't worried that he had met with any accident. He didn't take it to heart. They had thought that he had returned to his faction. Unexpectedly, he was still in the Earth domain. And he was secretly following her. "Indeed, your ability has increased by more than a little." Zhu Wuxian's icy cold voice was mixed with a few hints of ridicule. What was he ridiculing her for? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him as she kept her vigilance. "Don't stand so high up if you want to talk, my neck hurts." Her words had just ended. A gust of cold wind blew over. Chapter 3892. Really close. So close that the tip of his foot was pressing against hers. As long as he raised his head slightly, their breaths would collide with each other. Yiqing Luo's reaction was swift. Almost at the instant when she raised her head, she retreated 2 steps backwards, widening the distance between her and Zhu Wuxian. Then she asked, "Why are you following me?" Zhu Wuxian didn't move, only using that pair of black icy cold eyes to look at her quietly. His eyes were dark and heavy. Yiqing Luo couldn't tell how many emotions were hidden under that pair of eyes. He didn't speak. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to ask further. She walked past Zhu Wu Axian and walked towards the direction of the Qiao residence. Taking a step, Zhu Wu Axian followed closely behind. Hearing the footsteps behind her and the man's thick plum fragrance, this made Yiqing Luo unable to ignore the follower behind her. She stopped in her tracks and turned her head to look at him. If you don't want to answer my question, then don't follow me. Zhu Wu Axian's gaze was fixed on Yiqing Luo. Looking at that pair of alluring eyes which made his heart fluttered, like the stars, dazzling eyes. He went into a daze for a moment. The lines on his face became gentler. But Yiqing Luo felt a little unnatural from his weird stare. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased into a bundle as a sliver of displeasure surfaced between her brows. Zhu Wu Axian, if there's nothing, please don't disturb me. Yes. Zhu Wu Axian looked at her eyes as he blurted out a word. Yiqing Luo stood on the spot. What's the matter? Say it. Zhu Wu Axian's cold eyes were calm and his voice was calm without any ripples. I miss you. Yiqing Luo, goodbye. Goodbye. Yiqing Luo left without turning back. Zhu Wu Axian's expression congealed slightly. The lines which had finally softened suddenly turned cold and hard again. He stared at Yiqing Luo's back view. Between his brows, some black qi leaked out. Perhaps he had sensed something amiss. Yiqing Luo took 2 steps forward and swiftly turned her head around as her expression was extremely grave as she looked behind her. His gaze swept past Zhu Wu Axian, and then he quickly looked at the surroundings. The expression on his face became more and more solemn. Zhu Wuxin, did you sense a very strange aura just now? She asked. Zhu Wuxin's eyes flickered. His thick eyelashes hid all the emotions in his eyes, leaving only an icy chill. No. No. Impossible. That fleeting sense of danger just now was definitely not an illusion. Zhu Wuxin would never let her feel such a sense of danger and unease in front of her. Therefore, there must be someone hiding in the dark. In the dark. Could it be? Yiqing Luo suddenly recalled that in the afternoon, Huangfu Trio had followed Huangfu Jintian to the treasures exchange. When Huangfu Fengyan left, she looked at her with a gaze. Her heart skipped a beat. Not good. Ah Sheng and Zixi. Something must have happened at the treasures exchange hall. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wu Axian stood in front of Yiqing Luo. His expressionless face was indifferent. Move aside. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand to push Zhu Wu Axian aside. But Zhu Wuxin grabbed her wrist with the back of his hand. Yiqing Luo struggled but he didn't loosen his grip. His calm and indifferent face brought along an oppressive aura. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly. Since she couldn't struggle free, she might as well not move. She only raised her head as her charming eyes were coated with ice, looking at Zhu Wu Axian's eyes without blinking. Your appearance, is it a coincidence or? Zhu Wu Axian's ability was above hers. Chapter 3893. But now, Zhu Wu Axian intentionally stopped her here. This made Yiqing Luo think more. Zhu Wu Axian's deep and icy cold eyes looked deeply at her suspicious gaze as his thin lips slowly rose, as though it was curled into an extremely shallow arc. That arc was very shallow, very shallow. So shallow that Yiqing Luo could only feel his self-deprecation. In your heart, am I such a person? Zhu Wu Axian's voice was also very faint, with a tinge of ridicule. The hand which he held her wrist tightened. Yiqing Luo took a small step back. Facing such a piercing, questioning, and hurt gaze, she really doubted herself. Did she make a mistake? After all, Zhu Wu Axian indeed didn't seem like someone. who would cooperate with others to complete some plans. It was just as he had said before. He would never do anything to hurt her. But there was a strange feeling in her heart, reminding her of something. That fleeting sense of danger just now was gone. And Zhu Wuxian's unresponsive attitude. It really made her have no choice but to think more. She exchanged glances with Zhu Wuxian for a moment. She kept away the suspicion and probing in her eyes as she shook her wrist which was being held. All right, I believe you. But you must let go of me now. My friend might be in danger. Not letting go. Zhu Wuxian leaned even closer. The plum fragrance from his body enveloped her. Yiqing Luo wasn't used to it and wanted to retreat, but Zhu Wuxian held her even tighter as he pulled her towards his direction. Every time you ask me to let go, Yiqing Luo, is your heart made of iron? Yiqing Luo immediately raised her hand and blocked his chest. She raised her head as her brows creased even tighter. Zhu Wuxian, if you continue to pester me endlessly, don't force me to really suspect you. Ha! He laughed lightly as his indifferent expression didn't fluctuate at all. His lips curled into a self-deprecating smile, as though he was ridiculing himself for being so ridiculous. Haven't you suspected me enough? Zhu Wuxian's clear voice was calm, but Yiqing Luo could tell that he was condemning her. Yiqing Luo felt that today's Zhu Wuxian was extremely strange. Following her for no reason. Then, he stopped her for no reason. She didn't want to suspect Zhu Wuxian. However, Zhu Wuxian's current actions made her doubt him. Yiqing Luo's eyes darkened as a layer of frost appeared between her brows. In that case, your current motive is to not let me rush over to the treasure-gathering exchange? Zhu Wuxian's brows twitched slightly. Finally, he released Yiqing Luo's wrist. Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at him as she speedily flew towards the direction of the treasure-gathering exchange. Just as he moved, something tightened around his waist. Zhu Wuxian's wrist circled around her waist. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk. What exactly do you want to do? I'll go with you in case you run away. Zhu Wuxian narrowed his cold eyes. His clear voice was frighteningly deep, giving off a strange feeling of danger. Yiqing Luo's fingers touched his hand which was wrapped around her waist, and with a nimble movement, she distanced herself from his approach. We can do it together, but don't get touchy. Except for Dmo Xian. If any other man approached her, she would feel repulsed. Not to mention, clasping her wrists and hugging her waist. Yiqing Luo's feet stirred up the wind as her speed was extremely fast. Zhu Wuxian was behind her, gazing deeply at her back view. In his black pupils, there seemed to be a whirlpool surging. This feeling was like every single time. She would turn around and leave without any hesitation. She had never turned around to give him a look. In her eyes, he would never exist. He could only look at her back view forever. Chapter 3894. Zhu Wuxian's 5 fingers tightened. In his mind, the bewitching words of that person from secluded palace kept appearing. Young Patriarch Chu, do you really think that by silently putting in the effort behind the scenes, you will be able to get the beauty back? I'll tell you directly, this way. We'll never get Yiqing Luo's heart. Why do you think Yiqing Luo is so dead set on the Overlord even after she had agreed to marry you? It's because the Overlord knows how to make use of his advantage, to make Yiqing Luo slowly fall into his emotional trap. Young Patriarch Chu, you're too silly. Silly. He also felt that he was rather silly. Obviously, based on his character. If he wanted, he would plunder. If he couldn't get it, he would destroy it. But unfortunately, when facing Yiqing Luo, countless of times, his mind had already devised 100 ways to plunder Yiqing Luo. But every time he met Yiqing Luo's gaze, all of his thoughts turned into a blank. Couldn't couldn't bear to see any trace of loathing towards him in her eyes. Couldn't bear to see any trace of disappointment towards him in her eyes. Couldn't bear to let her treat him as a stranger in future. Couldn't bear to even plunder. How could he bear to destroy it? Chu Wu Axian felt that he was becoming more and more unlike himself. Treasures exchange hole. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were cleaning up the treasures exchange hole. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were cleaning up the treasure gathering hole. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were cleaning up the treasures exchange hole. Almost subconsciously, the teacup in his hand had already been thrown towards a dark corner. Almost subconsciously, the teacup in his hand had already been thrown into the darkness. Gu Zishi fell into his arms as her face blushed slightly. Gu Zishi fell into his arms, her pretty face blushing. She also felt the cold murderous air in the room. She also sensed the chilling aura that permeated the room. Just as that teacup hit the dark corner. When the teacup hit the dark corner, it was already too late. A few figures speedily dashed out. Following that, a few assassins dressed in black jumped in from all directions. Then, a few assassins dressed in black jumped in from all directions, holding weapons in their hands that emitted a chilling light. Pei Xing tightened his grip on Gu Zishi's delicate body as he surveyed his surroundings. He then raised his eyebrows in alarm. There were at least 20 people in front of him. Each of them was tall and sturdy. Furthermore, the pressure from the Xian energy flowing through his body made it hard for him to breathe. Who are you? Why are you causing trouble at treasure gathering? This was Pei Xing's first time encountering an assassin. His handsome face was filled with vigilance. Do it. Why would the assassin waste so much time talking to Pei Xing? With a wave of his arm, he directed the other assassins to attack Pei Xing. Zishi, hold on tight. Pei Xing's face darkened, and the dark golden light in his eyes flickered even more wantonly. Immediately after, a strong burst of dark force erupted from his body. A dark golden light swirled around Pei Xing's body. Using his hand as a blade, he slashed out a few dark golden saber lights at the assassins who were coming at him from all directions. The dark rays slashed down, and the air seemed to have been cut open. The raging hurricane was like a wave, setting off huge waves. Sheng, don't bother about me. Gu Zishi looked at the surrounding murderous assassins, as a layer of cold glint surfaced in her eyes. 20 powerful assassins whose profound grades were not low, to let Pei Xing deal with them alone, and he still had to protect her. This was absolutely taxing. Chapter 3895. Gu Zishi's gaze swept across the assassins. His mind was already quickly analyzing the strength of these people and the time it would take for the two of them to react. Pei Xing did not let go. Gu Zishi knew he was worried about her. She held Pei Xing's hand around her waist and smiled at him. Trust me, I won't let myself get hurt. The dark light intertwined. Pei Xing saw the determination in Gu Zishi's eyes. He hesitated for a moment before letting go of her. Be careful. Gu Zishi smiled and nodded. Then, a spear appeared out of nowhere and attacked the surrounding assassins. The two of them attacked together. It did reduce the pressure on Pei Xing. But for the two of them, the situation was not optimistic. There were too many assassins. And they were not weak. No matter how strong they were, they could not fight against so many. The two of them were at a disadvantage. Especially in terms of their physical strength, they could not compare to specially trained assassins. They resisted. After a while, they could not escape from the blades of these assassins. They could not go on like this. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were forced to retreat again and again. They fled into the backyard of treasure gathering hole. There was no way out. At the same time, the surrounding assassins were closing in. Their attacks were very vicious. Their goal was clear. It was to take both of their lives. Killing moves were unleashed, the entire treasure exchange hall shook with thunderous aftershocks. But with such a huge commotion, it did not attract the attention of the citizens. It was as if the treasure exchange had been isolated from without embroiling city. After forcing back a wave of attacks, the two of them were exhausted. Gu Zishi looked up at the dark, starless sky above the courtyard. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes flashed. She got close to Pei Xing and stuffed something into his hands. I will attract their attention. You find a chance to throw this out of the courtyard. It was a round tube the length of a finger, carved out of bamboo. Pei Xing didn't know what it was when he held it in his hand. After instructing Pei Xing, Gu Zishi raised her spear. The spear had swept up a wave, and the explosive energy rushed towards the assassins. It was so fast that Pei Xing did not have time to swap places with Gu Zishi. He saw that Gu Zishi was already fighting with the assassin. If he delayed any longer, it would only put Zishi in more danger. Pei Xing gripped the tube tightly, leaped up, and threw the item outside the courtyard. He didn't know if it was an illusion. When the tube flew out of the courtyard, he could vaguely see a transparent wave of light blocking the tube. However, immediately after, a wisp of dark golden flowing light flickered within the transparent light wave. In the blink of an eye, the tube rushed out of the wall and landed outside the courtyard. Boom! There was a deafening explosion. A wisp of green smoke surged into the sky. The green smoke quickly filled the sky and formed a complicated pattern. Pei Xing didn't have much time to pay attention to this strange scene. After making sure that the tube was thrown out of the hospital, some of the assassins had already sensed that something was wrong and quickly pounced towards him, wanting to stop him. Ugh! There was a muffled grunt. Gu Zishi's figure stood in front of him. The spear flipped, repelling the countless killer moves in front of it. However, the remnant might was still vibrating. Gu Zishi was hit in the chest. Zishi! Pei Xing's pupils constricted. He quickly rushed forward and held Gu Zishi's delicate body. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Gu Zishi's mouth. Chapter 3896. I'm fine. Gu Zishi raised her hand and wiped the blood from the corner of her lips. She shook her head at Pei Xing and said, "Don't get distracted. Hold on a little longer. Our reinforcements will be here soon." The woman's face was clearly pale, but the corners of her mouth curved into a faint smile, pretending to be relaxed as she comforted him. Pei Xing had an indescribable feeling in his heart. When the surrounding assassins saw this, they took the opportunity to rush forward. A murderous aura spread across the sky. However, the man who was holding the woman in his arms was stiff and motionless. It was as if he did not notice the presence of the assassins. The assassin was closing in on him at high speed. Gu Zishi's pupils dilated as she struggled to stand in front of Pei Xing. All of a sudden, Pei Xing let out a roar. The man hugged the woman and suddenly raised his head. His handsome face looked somewhat ferocious because of the roar. His eyes were covered in a layer of dark golden light. Such a radiance was extremely dazzling. It was as if all the light had gathered in his eyes. Pei Xing roared. The surrounding assassins who were swarming over were all sent flying by the intense flowing light that burst forth from Pei Xing's body. When Yiqing Luo just rushed over, this was what she saw. She frowned slightly and looked at the man in front of her who was surrounded by flowing lights. The Huangfu bloodline in Pei Xing's body was activated once again. This was not a good sign. This kind of frequent activation of the Huangfu bloodline was a little like her using a divine artifact or some other power to temporarily increase her strength. It was very easy for it to exceed the limits of her body. Suddenly, she sensed something, and her ears twitched. A group of forces is approaching. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly as she glanced sideways at Zhu Wuxian's direction. Chu Wuxi nodded expressionlessly. She raised her head and looked at the spreading smoke in the sky. This approaching force. Was Gu Zixi using this signal flare to call for reinforcements, or were they from the killer's side? At this moment, Pei Xing had already stopped shouting. He slightly tightened his arms around Gu Zixi and lowered his eyes. Because of Pei Xing's roar and the aura bursting forth from his body, Gu Zixi was dumbfounded. Pei Xing lowered his head. Her eyelashes fluttered, and when she met Pei Xing's gaze, she froze. Pei Xing's eyes were dark gold. It was different from the dark golden flowing light that flashed from time to time. The current him. His eyes were dark gold in color. It was a noble and majestic color. Are you scared? Pei Xing gently bent down, kissed her forehead, and asked softly. Gu Zixi blinked her eyes and shook her head violently. No, no, don't be afraid. I won't let those people hurt you again. Pei Xing's voice was still gentle. However, the expression on his face and his dark golden eyes were filled with a chilling killing intent. He wondered if it was because of the color of her eyes. Gu Zixi felt that Pei Xing's aura was so strong that he was 8 meters tall. Pei Xing gently pushed Gu Zixi behind his back. His figure was tall and straight. He looked at the assassins who had been sent flying, and his dark golden eyes flashed with an extremely cold killing intent. The assassins looked at each other for a moment. Then, they pounced on Pei Xing. On the outer wall of the courtyard, 2 blazing figures were extremely eye-catching. The wind blew and Zhu Wuxian's clothes fluttered. His eyes were calm as he looked at Yiqing Luo. Aren't you in a hurry to save him? Why aren't you making a move? Chapter 3897. The current Pei Xing shouldn't have any problem dealing with those killers. She made her move. She might as well let Pei Xing nurture some experience. Let him deal with it himself. She was just going to watch the show and wait for the team that was rushing over. Which side were they from? It was indeed as what Yiqing Luo said. The assassins who originally had the upper hand were besieging Pei Xing, but they were actually unable to suppress Pei Xing's arrogance. On the contrary, it made Pei Xing braver as he fought. But it was after all 1 against 20. Under the entanglement, Pei Xing's body was covered with scattered wounds. His robe was dyed red with blood. This made Pei Xing even more bloodthirsty. The profound rays in his hands became sharper and sharper. Wave after wave of Xian waves exploded. The sounds of fighting were extremely loud. The originally narrow and simple backyard had turned into ruins under the entanglement. Sheng. Gu Zixi's voice was trembling as she stared at Pei Xing with reddened eyes. Looking at the increasing number of wounds on Pei Xing's body, she gripped her long spear tightly as she wanted to go forward to help. But she was worried that her rash actions would implicate Pei Xing. Now Pei Xing alone was suppressing 20 of them. If this rhythm was disrupted, Pei Xing would be overwhelmed. She was extremely anxious as she stared anxiously at the sky outside the courtyard, which was filled with green smoke. She turned her head. She saw 2 figures standing on top of the wall. It was Yiqing Luo. On seeing Yiqing Luo, Gu Zixi's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to open her mouth, she saw the young lady's bright eyes curling into a smile as she shook her head. Gu Zixi was stunned as she didn't understand what was going on. Yiqing Luo was obviously just by the side. Why didn't she help Pei Xing? But she was very clear in her heart. Yiqing Luo absolutely wouldn't ignore Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo definitely had her reasons for making such a decision. No matter how anxious Gu Zixi was, she forcefully suppressed it down. Knowing that Yiqing Luo was just by the side, She wasn't worried anymore. She's asking you for help. Chu Wu Axian naturally noticed Gu Zixi gaze as his lips twitched coldly. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her eyes flashed. Why do I feel that you seem to be more anxious than me? Zhu Wu Axian sneered softly and said in a self-mocking manner, just now, in order to rush over to save these two people, you spoke coldly to me. Now that I've accompanied you here, you're watching the show. Do you think I can feel at ease? Your heart will also have times where it's not balanced. Yiqing Luo slowly leaned in close to Zhu Wu Axian, as her gaze looked straight at the direction of his heart. Zhu Wu Axian's expression was cold, and his gaze was somewhat indifferent. I only have feelings for you, but you will only treat me as if I have no feelings for you. Yiqing Luo opened her eyes. His gaze returned to the battlefield below. The words that came out of his mouth were directed at Zhu Wuxin. My answer is the same as before. Chu Wuxin, it's time for you to walk out of the past. You, who are always limited by the past, will never be able to let others see your heart. I only want you to see it. Zhu Wuxin's words of love came one after another. Yiqing Luo felt that every time she met Zhu Wu Axian, Zhu Wuxin's cheesy words of love were upgraded. Every single time, it was even more seductive than the previous time. This didn't fit his image of an iceberg brother. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath. Towards Zhu Wu Axian, who was extremely obsessed, he wouldn't listen to any of her rejections. Facing Zhu Wu Axian, she felt a sense of helplessness. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision caught something. He's here. Chapter 3898. When Yiqing Luo landed on the ground. Coincidentally, he stood in front of the group of people who were rushing over. There were about 30 people. They were all dressed in dark green clothes. The blood-stained flower pattern embroidered on it revealed their identities. Bloody mercenary group. The leader of the group was the most eye-catching existence. She was wearing a dark-colored dress with elegant pendants. He didn't seem like a leader at all. When Su Qingbing saw that the person blocking in front of her was Yiqing Luo, the grave and anxious expression on her face faded a little. Miss Yi, have you seen Zixi? Yiqing Luo nodded as she raised her hand and pointed towards the fading green smoke. This is your blood mercenary group's signal flare. Yes. Su Qingbing nodded. However, his eyes were looking around quickly. Finally, his gaze fell on the entrance of the Gathering Treasures Exchange. Captain, I can feel the fluctuation of Xian Qi coming from inside. Zixi should be inside. Deputy Regiment Commander Bo's face was filled with anxiety. When he looked at Zhu Bao, he shot forward like a cannonball. Su Qingbing didn't stop him. The signal flare was shot by Gu Zixi. If it wasn't an emergency, Gu Zixi would never use this signal flare. Zixi is fine. Yiqing Luo pointed to the other side of the wall. If you're worried, you can go up and take a look. Su Qingbing furrowed her brows as a complicated expression appeared on her face. However, when they saw a red figure standing on the wall, a man emitting an extremely cold aura, their eyes unconsciously widened. Chu. Su Qingbing's expression changed unpredictably when she saw the man's face. And that person's vision had always been on Yiqing Luo. His face was cold. However, the emotions in his eyes were gentle. It was only when he sensed Su Qingbing's gaze that he raised his eyes slightly. When he looked at her, it was as if his eyes were covered with a layer of frost. When Yiqing Luo heard Su Qingbing's unfinished words, she couldn't help but raised her slender brows. Chu. Su Qingbing actually knew Zhu Wuxin. Furthermore, just now, Zhu Wuxin's gaze had paused on Su Qingbing for more than 3 seconds. In other words, Zhu Wuxin also knew Su Qingbing. But there was no time for Yiqing Luo to ponder over it. Bo Songyi's explosive roar could be heard from the side of the treasure's exchange hall. Zishi. Are you hurt? This roar. Su Qingbing was startled awake. It also interrupted Yi Qing Luo's deep thoughts. Su Qingbing quickly walked towards the treasure-gathering exchange. He had just arrived at the door. She stopped in her tracks and frowned. Then, he raised his hand and touched the air with his fingers. In the blink of an eye, Yi Qing Luo saw that the direction of Su Qingbing's finger seemed to have sliced open a thin seam in the air. The transparent qi wave slowly split open to both sides, revealing a huge hole. A cold light flashed in Su Qingbing's eyes, and her slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That layer of air wave instantly shattered into pieces and collapsed. Within the treasure's gathering exchange hall, violent and tyrannical profound energy spread out in all directions. When the 30 mercenaries from Bloody Mercenary Group who had rushed over felt this profound energy, their faces darkened and they looked at Su Qingbing with a serious expression. Su Qingbing nodded. A group of people swarmed into the treasure's exchange hall. Looking at the group of aggressive mercenaries, Duan Ling Tian nodded. Yi Qing Luo slanted her head, as she couldn't be bothered to stop them. Inside, Pei Xing should have already reached his limit. Chapter 3899. With the addition of the Blood Mercenaries Group's mercenaries, how would those killers have any ability to resist? Especially. This was the first time Gu Zishi had used the signal flare. Under Su Qingbing's anxiety, she brought along the Blood Mercenaries Group's elite mercenaries. With this move, those killers could only wait to be captured. Yi Qing Luo and Su Qingbing walked to the backyard. Bo Songyi was supporting Gu Zishi as they walked over. Group leader, Zishi is injured. Gu Zishi smiled at Su Qingbing. Group leader, I'm fine, it's just a small injury. Su Qingbing looked at Gu Zishi's pale face and frowned slightly. What's going on? Why are there killers here? She raised her eyes and glanced at Bo Songyi. Have you checked clearly? Who are these killers here to kill? Mentioning this, Bo Songyi's expression sunk. He glanced at Pei Xing's direction from the corner of his eyes and gave a cold harumph. The trouble that lad created has caused Zishi to suffer. I'm really fine, it has nothing to do with Xing. Gu Zishi heard Bo Songyi's tone and immediately opened her mouth to explain. Bo Songyi couldn't help but sneer. He can't even protect you, what kind of man is he? Gu Zishi bit her lower lip as a sliver of anger surfaced on her face. Bo Songyi. You. Before she could finish her words, Su Qingbing interrupted. Xing. Not calling me brother anymore. Su Qingbing opened her mouth. She indeed suppressed Gu Zishi's accusation. Gu Zishi's face blushed slightly as she slowly lowered her eyelids, looking a little shy. Not brother anymore. TSK. Su Qingbing's lips curled as her elegant face broke out into a smile. Then congratulations, the clouds have parted to see the moon. Gu Zishi's face turned even redder. The two of them spoke one after another. Bo Songyi was completely stunned by the amount of information that was revealed. He looked at Gu Zishi in astonishment as his voice trembled. You and that lad. Gu Zishi smiled as she nodded. The glow in Bo Songyi's eyes dimmed. But he pretended not to mind as he said, congratulations. Coincidentally, Pei Xing, with the help of the mercenaries, had restrained all the killers and was anxiously looking for Gu Zishi. When he saw Gu Zishi, he quickly walked over. He stretched out his long arm and pulled Gu Zishi away from Bo Songyi's side into his embrace. He placed his large palm on Gu Zishi's face and gently caressed it. Are you all right? He asked gently. Gu Zishi leaned against his chest, and her pretty face was slightly flushed. I'm fine. When their eyes met, Yi Shiwen's expression changed. It was as if there was no room for anyone else. Bo Songyi looked at his empty wrist, then raised his head and looked at Gu Zishi, who was obviously happy and sweet. His hand, which was suspended in mid-air, clenched into a fist. Su Qingbing walked over and gently patted his shoulder. Then, he walked past Bo Songyi and walked into the courtyard. This melodramatic relationship drama made Yiqing Luo smack her lips non-stop. However, she did not intend to intervene in this melodramatic scene. She glanced at the two of them, and after confirming that they only had some superficial injuries, she followed Su Qingbing into the courtyard. When he passed by Pei Xing, she took out a medicine bottle and stuffed it into his hand. In the courtyard, the mercenaries stood by the side. The killers knelt on the ground, and one by one, their masks were torn off, revealing their faces. The killers had apparently been injected with profound qi, and were rooted to the ground, unable to even commit suicide. The mercenaries stood neatly by the side. The killers were pressed onto the ground in a sorry state. This stark contrast. TSK, let the Blood Red's elite mercenaries come over to wrap things up. Chapter 3900. Yiqing Luo and Su Qingbing walked over. The killer's eyes widened as they stared at the both of them with hatred. As though they were conveying their thoughts, don't try to dig out any information from us. I will not say anything even if I die. Kill me if you have the guts. Were killers afraid of death? No. They had to commit suicide if they failed the mission. They had the determination to die when they went out on a mission. What was there to be afraid of? So, other than the few killers who were killed by Pei Xing, the remaining 10 overkillers all had a "I am not afraid of anything" expression. Yiqing Luo swept past the killers' faces and asked Su Qingbing sideways, "These killers, which killer force are they from? You may not believe it if I say it." Su Qingbing shot a glance at the killers as her lips curled into a ridiculing arc. From their attire, these killers should be from Heaven Realm, Killer Alliance. Heaven Realm. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. She really couldn't believe it if she said it out. This bunch of weak scum killers. Before Pei Xing's transformation, he was already able to fight against 20 of them. Although they were at a disadvantage, but they weren't able to kill Pei Xing. Especially the moment the mercenaries came over. They didn't even have the chance to resist and were directly pressed onto the ground. Wasn't this too useless? Killers from Heaven Realm. So weak. Surely it wasn't a joke. No. Seeing the meaning of Yiqing Luo's expression, Su Qingbing directly responded, "Because I brought the elites from Blood Red." Her words paused slightly, as though she was afraid that Yiqing Luo didn't understand. She explained, "These elites' abilities are well known in Heaven Realm." Yiqing Luo sucked in a breath of cold air. "They are in the Earth Realm. Doesn't that violate the balance of the realm? Won't the balance historian interfere? Generally speaking, when one's ability reached a certain level, after accepting the assessment, they would be forced to ascend to the next realm." Su Qingbing gave her a "you are a country bumpkin" look. "As long as you don't do anything that violates the balance of the realm, the historian can't do anything." All right. If that was the explanation, then these Heaven Realm killers wouldn't be that weak. But Yiqing Luo felt that they were still quite weak. The Assassin Alliance was the largest assassin organization in Heaven Realm. With a high status, the price would naturally be high. The customers who accepted orders were either rich or powerful. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. He already had a candidate in mind. "Do you know who the mastermind is?" Su Qingbing raised her eyebrows. "If you know, then kill these people." Yiqing Luo went into a blank, as her charming eyes lifted up slightly, meeting Su Qingbing's eyes. This woman seemed to be very observant. What she wants. Su Qingbing could guess it very quickly. Su Qingbing, on the other hand, was calm. After their eyes met, she even smiled at her. Yiqing Luo hid the probing look in her eyes and replied with a smile, "The killer from the heaven realm, the target is Pei Xing, except, Pei Xing." Yiqing Luo hadn't even finished her words. Suddenly, an anxious voice descended from the sky. Then, a figure rushed into the courtyard. The man scanned his surroundings. After locking onto his target, his figure flashed and he dashed over. Pei Xing was applying medicine on Gu Zixie's wound. Suddenly, his shoulder was grabbed by an enormous force. His body was turned to the other side. She saw an old, wrinkled face, and a pair of concerned and worried eyes. Old master. Pei Xing was so shocked that he stuttered. Chapter 3901. Huangfu Jintian pressed both his hands on Pei Xing's shoulders as he sized him up. Finally, her gaze landed on the pair of eyes that were covered in dark golden flowing light. "Your eyes." Huangfu Jintian's white brows creased tightly. "Are you all right? Earlier I sensed that you had once again activated the Huangfu family's energy and I was worried about you, so I followed the feeling and rushed over." After seeing Pei Xing's eyes, Huangfu Jintian knew that what he had sensed earlier wasn't an illusion. When Pei Xing heard that, his throat tightened as his eyes stared blankly at the old man in front of him. His heart tightened a little. For so many years, this was the first time he felt concern from an elder. "What's the matter? Are you hurt somewhere?" Huangfu Jintian saw that he didn't speak for a long time as his white brows creased even tighter. He pulled Pei Xing's arm and took his pulse. Pei Xing regained his senses as he hurriedly shook his head. "I'm fine. I'm fine. Luckily." Blood mercenary group and all Luo rushed over. "I'm fine." Huangfu Jintian, who was taking Pei Xing's pulse, frowned even tighter. This child's body was too weak. He could tell that he had absolutely suffered hardship since young. He had to recuperate properly in future. Finding out that Pei Xing's body was weak, Huangfu Jintian's heart doted on Pei Xing even more. He patted Pei Xing's shoulder as he shifted his attention to the surroundings. When he saw the rows of disheveled killers kneeling on the ground, his gaze suddenly turned sharp. What on earth is going on? Huangfu Jintian strode towards the middle of the courtyard. The current him had a cold hard expression as his dignified and noble aura wasn't concealed at all. Step by step, he neared the killers. It suppressed the formless pressure. Yiqing Luo had not expected that Huangfu Jintian would actually rush over. But just from Huangfu Jintian's reaction and performance earlier, he was indeed a qualified elder. His concern towards Pei Xing came from the bottom of his heart. But even after Pei Xing went to Heaven Realm, with Old Master looking after him, he would still be surrounded by danger. There were some things that she had to remind Old Master. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her pink lips curled up as she spoke out softly. "Does Old Master Huangfu really want to know what's going on? Someone dares to hurt my grandson. You're really not putting my Huangfu family in your eyes." Huangfu Jintian was furious to the extreme. He raised his leg and kicked the chest of an assassin. "I'll definitely get to the bottom of this matter. There's no need to investigate." Yiqing Luo's lips curled up lazily. "Old Master, don't be too full of yourself, after all. If you were to slap his face later, it would hurt Ah Xing's heart." Yiqing Luo's words were already very straightforward. Huangfu Jintian naturally understood the ridicule in her words. Immediately, their faces darkened. Yiqing Luo smiled again. "Originally I wanted to trouble the brothers from Blood Red to help settle this matter, but now that Old Master Huangfu is here, I shall hand this matter over to Old Master to settle." As Yiqing Luo said that, she looked towards Su Qingbing with a smile. "What does Blood Red Group leader think? These killers' assassination target is Pei Xing. How Pei Xing wants to deal with it, we'll deal with it. Su Qingbing cooperated. It was one thing to guess something in her heart. But hearing an outsider saying that the assassination target was Pei Xing, this feeling was another thing. Huang Fuzhentian's expression turned even darker. Chapter 3902. Yiqing Luo was obviously passing the right to choose to him. She wanted to see if he cared more about Pei Xing or his other grandchildren. Yes. The other grandchildren. Huangfu Trio. The killers from Heaven Realm, and their target was Pei Xing. It was obvious who the mastermind was. Pei Xing also understood the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. A trace of paleness appeared on his handsome face. He pursed his lips as he looked at Huang Fuzhentian. As though he wanted to know, in Huang Fuzhentian's heart, what kind of attitude would he use to settle this matter when his grandson did something wrong. Facing the gazes of a few juniors, Zhang Xian nodded. Especially his own grandson, he was extremely careful and hid his nervous gaze. Huang Fuzhentian's white brows creased tightly as he gritted his teeth. This matter concerns the Huangfu family, I will. Before he could finish his words, Pei Xing, who was looking at Huang Fuzhentian cautiously, suddenly interrupted him. Forget it. Forget it. Huang Fuzhentian even suspected that he was hallucinating in his ears. The rest of the people also looked at Pei Xing in astonishment. He was almost killed. And he said forget it. Was there a hole in his brain? That was a killer from Heaven Realm. It was obvious that he wanted his life. Now he had old Master Huangfu as his backing to settle this matter. Shouldn't he make use of this opportunity to let old Master Huangfu cut off the mastermind's chance? So that this kind of assassination would not happen again. Pei Xing actually let it go just like that. The mercenaries present were unable to understand Pei Xing's actions. Bo Songyi's face was gloomy as he stared intently at Pei Xing and Gu Zixi interlocked fingers. His heart was burning with anger. What, forget it? Isn't he afraid of death? A cowardly man, on what basis can he give Zixi happiness? He's not worthy at all. His enraged voice was definitely not soft. It also broke the shocked atmosphere because of Pei Xing. Everyone's gazes turned towards Bo Songyi. Although Huang Fuzhentian felt more or less relieved because of Pei Xing's forget it, Huang Fuzhentian felt a sense of relief in his heart. But when he heard Bo Songyi's rebuke and ridicule, his heart of protecting his child welled up. A pair of fierce and dignified eyes glared at Bo Songyi. Bo Songyi was forced to step back by Huang Fuzhentian's gaze. Gu Zixi also did not understand Pei Xing's actions. She tugged at Pei Xing's arm and looked at him in confusion before shaking her head at him. She also suggested that the best choice was to let the old man handle this matter. However, Pei Xing smiled at her. There was a smile in his eyes. He seemed to be consoling her, telling her not to worry. Gu Zixi still wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo patted her shoulder and shook her head at her. Pei Xing had already made up his mind. This was Pei Xing's own decision. He had his own considerations when he chose to forget it. Gu Zixi pursed her red lips. In the end, she did not speak again. She only held the man's arm tightly with one hand and used her actions to tell him, she's always been there. The other side. Su Qingbing had already turned to the side and stood in front of Bo Songyi, blocking the old man's gaze. Huang Fuzhentian retracted his gaze and looked back at Pei Xing as he frowned. You've been wrong today, are you sure? You don't need me to stand up for you. Pei Xing didn't avoid his gaze this time. Instead he met the old man's gaze and nodded. I'm sure, this matter. Let's forget about it. Chapter 3903. These light words were so minute that if one didn't listen carefully, it was impossible to tell what he was talking about. Because of this, Huang Fujiantian felt his heart jolting as though it was touched by something. These words were like needles stabbing into his heart. It was so uncomfortable. This child, what kind of life had he led in the past? Was that why he was being so careful now? Not wishing for him to be put in a difficult position, just let go of the chance to take revenge. Huang Fujiantian was very clear what kind of people his 3 grandchildren were. Even if Pei Xing let them off, those 3 people wouldn't be grateful. On the contrary, they would be insatiable. In a large family like the Huangfu family, Huang Fujiantian wasn't averse to this kind of battle. But, seeing Pei Xing, he always had a kind of guilt and heartache feeling. Huang Fujiantian took a look at Pei Xing as his expression was dignified as he spoke resolutely. Lad, you don't need to say any more. If I can't even protect my own grandson, then what's the point of bringing you back to the Huangfu family? I have my own plans for this matter. Pei Xing opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But looking at Huang Fujiantian's gaze, he still kept his mouth shut. Huang Fujiantian patted Pei Xing's shoulder heavily. Don't worry, no matter what, grandfather will help you to shoulder it. Pei Xing's eyelashes moved as he looked at Huang Fujiantian in a daze. Somewhere in his heart was being softened bit by bit. His lips moved. Grandfather. The word grandfather had yet to come out of his mouth. Suddenly, he felt a gust of cold wind, bringing along a lady's fragrance. It was accompanied by a lady's anxious voice. Grandfather. Why aren't you resting in your room? Why did you come out alone? A slender figure stood in between Pei Xing and Huang Fujiantian. It was Huangfu Fengyan. Her face was filled with anxiety as she looked at Huang Fujiantian with an anxious expression, as though she was worried about something. At this distance, she could see the fine sweat on Huangfu Fengyan's forehead. Apparently, she had sprinted over. Yiqing Luo specially swept a glance towards the direction where Huangfu Fengyan came from. But she didn't discover those 2 young masters from the Huangfu family. She raised her brows, feeling a little curious. Those 2 people actually didn't follow. Huangfu Fengyan actually came here alone. When he saw Huangfu Fengyan, Huang Fujiantian's face darkened. His expression was extremely ugly as he gave Huangfu Fengyan a backhand slap. Huangfu Fengyan was hugging onto Huang Fujiantian's arm and was unable to avoid it at all. Like a stone that was ejected, he flew out and fell heavily on the ground. Huangfu Fengyan was stunned by the beating. He sat stiffly on the ground. Around her, there were battered and exhausted killers, staring at her with wide eyes. Huangfu Fengyan's heart fell to the bottom. These assassins, all of them failed. As soon as her grandfather saw her, he gave her a slap. In other words, Grandpa already knew. Huangfu Fengyan widened her eyes in horror. No. Absolutely not. He couldn't ruin his image in his grandfather's heart. Huangfu Fengyan couldn't be bothered about the intense pain from being slapped flying, and her eyes were red as she looked at Huang Fujiantian pitifully. Grandfather, why did you hit Yin? I don't have a granddaughter like you. Huang Fujiantian's expression remained unchanged. Chapter 3904. She swayed as she stood up. He purposely revealed his red and swollen face from the beating, in an attempt to arouse Huang Fujiantian's pity. Grandfather, don't listen to other people's slanderous words. That Yiqing Luo, she had previously harmed Yen, in this way. Huangfu Fengyan pointed at Yiqing Luo as she cried out in grievance. Yiqing Luo. Why did the blame fall onto her again? Huang Fujiantian felt even more disappointed. But, in front of so many people, he tried his best to suppress his anger. Huangfu Fengyan was after all his Huangfu family's 4th Mississippi. This kind of matter, although everyone was well aware of it, But they had to close the door and settle it privately. Otherwise, the entire Huangfu family's reputation would be thrown away. Huangfu Jintian retracted his sharp gaze, and when he looked at Pei Xing, he became even more benevolent than before. He patted Pei Xing lightly. Pei Xing, I will definitely give you an explanation. Really no need. Old master, don't affect Huangfu family because of me. Pei Xing took a look at Huang Fingyan as he shook his head and rejected. The more he rejected, the more old master doted on him. The more he looked at Huang Fingyan, the more vicious his gaze became. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but clicked her tongue when she saw this scene. She crossed her arms in front of her chest as her lips twitched lazily. Following that, she pulled Gu Zixi to her side and whispered into her ear, "Your Oxing has improved, he actually knows how to scheme." At this point in time, no one knew Pei Xing better than Gu Zixi, so she naturally understood Pei Xing's meaning. She smiled as her eyes revealed some pride. No matter what he does, I like him. Yiqing Luo pinched her. I know you like him, there's no need to keep talking about it. I'm just curious, how did your Oxing suddenly light up this skill? White lotuses were not only limited to women. When a man turned white, it was even scarier. For example, the current Pei Xing. He said, forget it. Did he really think that it was over? Not possible. Not possible. How could it be over, just like that? If it was according to their previous thoughts. Directly past this assassination matter to Old Master to handle. Indeed, they could get an explanation. But in the end, the Huangfu trio would absolutely not suffer too much damage. And in the future, it might even get worse. For example, he could be even more ruthless. But Pei Xing chose to give up on revenge on purpose. She felt sorry for the old man. Not only did she put herself in the position of a victim, but she also put herself in the position of a pitiful person who was not loved or loved. In this way, how could the old man really let it go? The old master would only feel sorry for Pei Xing. They would not easily let off the mastermind behind the assassination. Even if Huangfu and the other two didn't receive any substantial punishment in the end. However, in the future, the old master would feel guilty and dote on his kind-hearted and relatable little grandson even more. Pei Xing's move. It was a beautiful move. Gu Zixi's eyes sparkled as she looked at Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo couldn't stand this simple-minded couple style as she pushed Gu Zixi to Pei Xing's side, interrupting Huangfu Fengyan's sob. Old man, it's getting late. Everyone should disperse. Xing and Zixi's wounds need to be treated as well. Mention the wound. The old man felt even more guilty. Chapter 3905. Pei Xing hesitated for a moment. He glanced at Huangfu Fengyan's direction and shook his head. There's no need. I still have to tidy up this courtyard. An assassin had broken in. And a fight. The courtyard was already in shambles. Huangfu Jintian still wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo continued, Old master, Zixi is an alchemist. With Zixi taking care of her, you don't have to worry. After saying that, she glanced meaningfully at the assassins. The old man must have other things to deal with, right? Huangfu Jintian's expression swiftly became extremely gloomy. His cold eyes looked at the miserable assassins on the ground, then looked at Huangfu Fengyan. He snorted coldly, his majestic anger surging. Huangfu Fengyan felt a chill run down her spine. There was only one thought in his mind. That was, he absolutely could not admit it. Once she admitted it, she would lose everything she had now. Huangfu Jintian's gaze grew fiercer and fiercer. After staring at Huangfu Fengyan for a while, he forcefully closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the emotions on his face were much calmer. He clasped his hands at Su Qingbing with a solemn expression. Bloody leader, thank you for your help today. I, Huangfu Zhentian, will remember your kindness. I'll definitely repay your kindness in the future. Then, he said, can you let me handle these assassins? It's not really a favor. Bloody mercenary group didn't come here to save Pei Xing. Su Qingbing's lips curled into a smile. As for these assassins, if old Master Huangfu wants them, feel free to take them. Not to save that brat. Huangfu Zhentian caught the main point and frowned slightly. What do you mean by that? As profound practitioners of the heaven realm, which was above the earth realm, basically, he did not know much about the people or forces in the lower realms. But, there were 3 great forces in the land, and even old Master Huangfu, who was in the heaven, had heard of them. One was the gathering place of lunatics, at the underworld palace. One of them was the Linglong Palace, which nurtured the saintesses of the 3 main cities. The other was the bloody mercenary group in this world. Even if bloody mercenary group was the second-ranked mercenary group, his reputation rose like a crane. This was because the number 1 mercenary group had already developed to the heaven realm. And this bloody mercenary group was also known as the second mercenary group to develop their forces into heaven realm. Huangfu Zhentian's attitude towards Su Qingbing was so gentle. Aside from the fact that Bloody had saved Pei Xing, he was also impressed by the bloody mercenary's abilities. Su Qingbing raised her slender eyebrows as a playful smile appeared on her beautiful face. She walked towards Pei Xing. No, to be more precise, it was Gu Zixi who was walking towards Pei Xing. He then raised his hand and placed it lazily on Gu Zixi's shoulder. As he raised his head, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. There was an indescribable meaning in his smile. I brought my Bloody Red's elite troops here to save my troublesome vice regiment commander. Saving Pei Xing was just a convenience. So. Old Master Huangfu, you really don't have to take it to heart. Vice leader. Gu Zixi. This news caused Huangfu Zhentian to be stunned. The one who had the most exaggerated reaction was Huangfu Fengyan. She almost bounced up from the ground and glared at Gu Zixi. Her voice was trembling. Her Vice Regiment Commander. Are you kidding me? Su Qingbing tilted her head and glanced sideways at Huangfu Fengyan. Chapter 3906. No. I don't believe. Huangfu Fengyan's eyes widened in disbelief as her body staggered. She had naturally heard of the blood mercenary group's name. She also knew that it was a mercenary group which many large forces admired. Gu Zixi, that slut, was just a lowly slut who could only cling on to Pei Xing's illegitimate son. How could she change so quickly? And become the vice group leader of the blood mercenary group? Vice group leader. It wasn't as simple as the blood mercenary group. That was second only to the group leader. Huangfu Fengyan couldn't believe that the lady whom she had belittled would have such a powerful background. Huangfu Fengyan's sharp voice made Pei Xing regain his senses. He also widened his eyes in shock and astonishment. He only knew that Gu Zixi and the blood mercenary group had a good relationship. It was rumored that Gu Zixi had saved the blood mercenary group's group leader on the West Cliff Mountain, hence the blood mercenary group would occasionally help Gu Zixi or gather treasures. But he had never thought that Gu Zixi and the blood mercenary group had such a deep relationship. In his mind, he suddenly recalled what Yiqing Luo said previously. Gu Zixi gave up everything in the earth realm and followed him to the heaven realm. This everything. He didn't think too deeply at that time. Until now. He finally understood. This everything was really Gu Zixi's everything. She could even give up the identity of the blood mercenary group's vice group leader. Gu Zixi's feelings for him. How deep was it? Pei Xing only felt his heart suddenly constricting, as if something was squeezing it tightly. His eyes felt a little warm and sore. He looked at Gu Zixi without blinking. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and hugged Gu Zixi's petite body tightly in his arms. His head rested on Gu Zixi's shoulder. He said firmly, "Zixi, when we reach the heaven realm, we'll get married." Get married. These two words made Gu Zixi grab Pei Xing's clothes tightly in surprise. Her eyes instantly turned red as she nodded her head vigorously. The two of them hugged each other tightly. On the other side, Huang Fu Jintian took a deep look at the two of them hugging each other and looked at Su Qingbing. Although he didn't show it on his face, but in his heart, he was shocked when he heard this news. In his heart, he was even more satisfied with his grandson and the woman that he had taken a liking to. In his heart, a decision was slowly forming. His expression was solemn as he looked at Su Qingbing and said, "Regardless of the reason why Leader Scarlet had intervened, it is a fact that Leader Scarlet has saved that boy. I will definitely remember this kindness. As for other matters, don't worry, Leader Scarlet. Since I've personally brought that boy and Lady Gu to the Heaven Realm, I will definitely protect them." Any intelligent person would be able to tell. Su Qingbing had purposely revealed the reason why Gu Zixi was the vice leader of Bloody. To put it bluntly, he just wanted to show Gu Zixi how powerful she was. At the same time, it would change Gu Zixi's position in the Huangfu family's heart. It was also a warning to old Master Huangfu. Gu Zixi was not someone without a backer. If Gu Zixi was injured in the Heaven Realm, Bloody Mercenary Group would be the first to stand behind Gu Zixi and take revenge for her with all their might. The group of people said a few more words. Old Master Huangfu dragged Huangfu Fengyan away. The Bloody Mercenaries followed behind Elder Huangfu with the assassins in tow. After a while, the courtyard quietened down again. Yiqing Luo took a look at the two who were still hugging each other tightly inside. What a pair of silly lovers. Muddle-headedly registered for the QQ reading character ranking. The babies helped to make a heart sign and gave a like. They didn't wish to rush into the top 40, they only wished to be in the top 100 and not let the crippled 7 emperors appear too desolate. Chapter 3907. She simply shifted her gaze away and looked at Su Qingbing, who had yet to leave. Su Qingbing still maintained a lazy posture. That dignified look on her elegant face had been retracted by quite a bit. She just raised her head and looked at that figure on the wall. Between her beautiful eyes, there was some brilliance flowing. But when Yiqing Luo took a careful look, it was a stretch of deep, without a single bit of emotion. She followed Su Qingbing's gaze. On the wall, the red-robed man who was standing against the wind met her eyes expressionlessly. The person Su Qingbing was looking at was Zhu Wuaxin. She raised her brows, feeling that she seemed to have discovered something incredible. Since he's safe, I'll make a move first. I'll leave these two fools in your care. Su Qingbing seemed to have sensed Yiqing Luo's gaze and immediately retracted her gaze, as she pretended not to mind and waved her hand. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a crescent shape as her figure moved and appeared next to Su Qingbing. She raised her hand and hooked onto Su Qingbing's shoulder. The young lady gave a teasing smile as she teased, "Why? Are you in a hurry to leave, afraid that I'll see through some secret that I shouldn't see?" Su Qingbing's beautiful eyes flashed as she subconsciously looked at Zhu Wuaxin. After this action was done, Su Qingbing then realized that she had been hooked. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened. Her curved brows and narrow long eyes outlined an arc, like a blooming datura flower, so alluring that it made one suffocated. Tisk, Su Qingbing's look made Yiqing Luo even more interested. She was really curious. What had happened between Su Qingbing and Zhu Wuaxin? She could tell. Su Qingbing's impression of Zhu Wuaxian was very deep. I have to return to Blood Color headquarters first. Su Qingbing's hair stood on end from Yiqing Luo's meaningful smile. She hurriedly found an excuse. She turned around and hurriedly leapt up the wall. On top of the wall, Su Qingbing intentionally halted her footsteps. Her vision clashed with Zhu Wuaxian. In just a few breaths' time, she raised her breath again and her figure flashed as she blended into the night. The courtyard which had turned into ruins fell into a strange silence. That pair of foolish lovers were still hugging each other, unwilling to part. A fool is a fool. Hugging each other and feeling each other's warmth, this was their happiness. But, Yiqing Luo shot a glance at the both of them as her lips suddenly curled into a crafty arc. Then, he lifted his leg and kicked Pei Xing's butt. Pei Xing's entire body was kicked forward by the force. Gu Zixi almost lost her footing. Following that, several medicine bottles were stuffed into their arms. Get out of the house and make love. Yiqing Luo turned their bodies around and pushed them towards the room which wasn't affected by the battle earlier. Pei Xing was forcefully pushed to the door as he struggled to turn his head around to take a look at Yiqing Luo. But because of Yiqing Luo's strength, he was unable to resist at all. Ah Luo, don't tell me you don't like our relationship because His Majesty is not here and you can't stand it? Yiqing Luo's expression instantly sunk. The hand that grabbed Pei Xing's shoulder suddenly tightened. Ah! Pei Xing screamed miserably as his shoulder struggled to pull away from Yiqing Luo's palm. It was so painful that he almost cried. Yiqing Luo gave a fake smile. If you still want to hug a beauty to sleep tonight, you better shut your mouth and roll into the room. Pei Xing, this smile is so scary. He swiftly hugged Gu Zixi tightly as he escaped into the room. Chapter 3908. In the courtyard, there was only Yiqing Luo left. She then stretched her body lazily. As she yawned, she looked towards the red figure standing on the wall. The show has ended, aren't you leaving? Zhu Wuaxian's vision, from the start, was fixed on her. When he saw the young lady's languid look, her long and narrow eyes were filled with a lazy misty look towards him. His eyes glowed with a bright light. Even his pitch-black pupils involuntarily contracted. His hands which were hanging by his side clenched into fists. Especially when that young lady yawned, with a soft and coquettish voice rang. His body, almost instantly turned stiff and taut. For a long time, the man didn't reply. Yiqing Luo lowered her hands as she raised her brows at him. Meeting with Zhu Wuaxian's scorching gaze. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly as she tilted her head, her eyes revealing a smile which didn't look like a smile. Have you seen enough? This sentence made Zhu Wuaxian have a response. His thin lips moved slightly as his voice was very cold. Not enough. If you're still conscious, then please go ahead. Take care, I won't send you off. Yiqing Luo intentionally ignored his provocative words as she impatiently waved her hand. Zhu Wuaxian instead flew down from the wall. He got close to Yiqing Luo. The red-robed man and red-robed young lady's figures intertwined. Yiqing Luo didn't evade. Instead she faced the man's approaching face, raising her head as her lips curled into a bright smile. This smile, like a blooming poppy flower, giving off a suffocating charm, magnified under his eyes. Zhu Wuaxian's heart skipped a beat. Immediately after, his body abruptly pulled away from Yiqing Luo. His eyes were flickering with erratic emotions. Yiqing Luo revealed an understanding smile. She was very clear. The more she expressed that she didn't want to interact with him, Zhu Wuaxian would be insatiable, wanting to leave a place in her heart. On the contrary, she cooperated with Zhu Wuaxian's words. Zhu Wuaxian would be even more shy than her. looking at Yiqing Luo's teasing smile. Zhu Wuxian's pupils contracted. He suddenly stretched out his hand and clasped Yiqing Luo's wrist as his eyes stared straight at her. Do you think that I don't dare to do anything to you? Yes. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly, if you dare. When I just arrived at the Earth realm, you painstakingly imprisoned me for half a month, and erased all my memories, you would have done it. The hand that was clasping her wrist suddenly tightened. Even Zhu Wuxin stiffened for a moment. Even now, you still blame me. Zhu Wuxin stared at her. It was not a question, but a statement. It would be a lie to say that I don't blame him. Yiqing Luo didn't try to hide it, no matter which woman it is. If she was kidnapped by another man and imprisoned by his side for as long as half a month, would she not blame that man? Zhu Wuxin's eyes darkened, and he clenched his fists. His slender fingers pressed onto Yiqing Luo's wrist, causing some pain. Zhu Wuxian didn't bother about Yiqing Luo's slightly creased brows because of the pain, but instead pressed down even tighter. Even the words that came out of his mouth were mixed with the meaning of gnashing his teeth. I shouldn't have been soft on you in the first place. Not soft. His meaning was that he should have taken the opportunity to eat her up in the first place. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, but there wasn't any hint of a smile in her eyes. If you really did that, then between us, there would no longer be any feelings. The next time we meet, we will be enemies. Enemies too. At least, you will not belong to that man. Zhu Wuxin's eyes seemed to be surging with waves. Chapter 3909. Yiqing Luo frowned. Looking at the madness in Zhu Wuxin's eyes, her heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously wanted to break free from Zhu Wuxin's grip. However, Zhu Wuxin tightened his grip. He reached out with his long arms. He then pressed Yiqing Luo heavily into his arms. The plum fragrance which assaulted her nostrils made Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly in discomfort. She struggled. Zhu Wuxin. Woman, you are really heartless. Zhu Wuxin was almost gnashing his teeth next to her ear. This time, I really do not want to go easy on you. As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted strength in his arm. The man's warm breath rushed over from a close distance. There was also a hint of fragrance mixed with it that made her feel alarmed. Almost at the instant the man lowered his head. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed coldly. His dark force burst forth. He flipped his palm, intending to attack Zhu Wuxin and avoid his approach. It was at this moment. A heavy groan sounded beside his ear. The hand on his waist suddenly loosened. What replaced it was another strong and powerful force. The familiar fragrance of sandalwood wafted into his nose. Yiqing Luo turned her head happily. Sure enough, she saw her man appear behind her. Dmo Xian had one arm around her waist. His expression was noble and elegant as his gaze was filled with a chilly glint as he stared intently at Zhu Wuxian. I'm late. The man's deep and mellow voice instantly soothed Yiqing Luo's restless heart. His large and thick palms pulled the young girl's delicate body into his embrace. It was different, thick, and sturdy. A different kind of warmth. It was a different taste. It was a completely different feeling from Zhu Wuxin. Dmo Xian. Was the feeling she wanted to have the most. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Suddenly, she raised her lips and tightly wrapped her arms around the man's firm waist. She buried her face in his chest. Struck by the palm, Zhu Wuxin had to retreat several steps before he could stabilize himself. The flame-like red swayed. After Yiqing Luo absorbed the warmth, she popped her head out to take a look at Zhu Wuxian. He felt that the current Zhu Wuxin had a gloomy feeling, as if the flames all over his body were about to be extinguished. As if I had lost all my life light. He seemed to have sensed her gaze. Zhu Wuxin clutched his chest and looked at her with a pale face. His eyes met hers. A smile appeared on his grave and stern face. His lips curled up slightly. There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but creased her slender brows once again. He didn't have time to think about it. A large palm suddenly covered her eyes. In front of him, there was only warmth, and he couldn't see anything. Don't look at him. The man's domineering voice rang in her ears, and there was a hint of jealousy in his tone. Then, he raised his head and looked at Zhu Wuaxian. His entire body exuded a chill. Zhu Wuaxian, I haven't settled the score with you for what happened last time. You dare to play the same trick again. The moment he opened his mouth. He was not angry, but he exuded an imposing aura. Zhu Wuxin sneered. What? I merely touched her, yet you're already so furious. Could it be that, you think she's dirty? As soon as he said that, the surrounding temperature had also dropped to the extreme. Dmo Xian's eyes gleamed coldly. The murderous aura was also sweeping wildly. But Zhu Wuaxian laughed crazily. That grave and stern face looked extremely insane. Both their profound rays intertwined. Just as it was about to explode. Suddenly, a slender fair hand gently placed on the back of the hand which covered her eyes. Slowly, it pulled that hand down. The young lady's eyes regained its clarity. Chapter 39:10. The young lady's alluring face was filled with calmness. The corners of his lips curled into a mocking sneer. Even the gaze which she shot towards Zhu Wuaxian was filled with viciousness. This gaze made Zhu Wuaxian's heart felt as though it was pierced by something as it trembled fiercely. As though something was gradually disappearing between him and Yiqing Luo. The red-robed man's eyes were filled with madness. At this moment, there was finally a slight fluctuation. The wind brought along the young lady's ridiculing laughter. Zhu Wuaxian, do you think that after knowing that you imprisoned me for nearly half a month, I will still be defenseless against you? Zhu Wuaxian, do you think that after doing this, I will belong to you again? Zhu Wuaxian. The dirty person, is you. The young lady spoke each word extremely clearly. Her voice was very sweet. But in Zhu Wuaxian's ears, it was like a sharp blade, fiercely slicing his eardrums. That sharp blade went down from his ears to his heart. And then slowly sliced his heart, bit by bit. Unbearable pain. Zhu Wuaxian shut his eyes tightly. From the moment you made a move against me earlier, I was completely certain. Earlier you stopped me several times, not allowing me to rush over to save Pei Xing, obviously. On purpose. At that moment, Yiqing Luo was already suspicious towards Zhu Wuaxian's appearance. But because it was Zhu Wuaxian, she didn't investigate further. Because she knew that Zhu Wuaxian's obsession towards her would absolutely not harm her. So she chose to believe in Zhu Wuaxian. Until just now. When she smelled that fragrance from the man. Yiqing Luo then realized that everything was because she was too naive. From the start of Zhu Wuaxian's appearance till now. All had a motive. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wuaxian heard Yiqing Luo's ridiculing words. And when she looked at him, that disappointment and ridicule. His heart felt as though it was being sliced into pieces. He subconsciously wanted to explain, Yiqing Luo, is not. Are you trying to say that it's not what I think? Yiqing Luo interrupted his words, as her smile became even more contemptuous. Even between his brows, there was a mocking smile that was not a smile. Zhu Wuaxian. Suddenly, she called his name in a serious tone. The young lady withdrew herself from Dmo Xian's embrace as she lifted her light footsteps and walked towards him. The girl's expression was cold, and her picturesque eyebrows were filled with killing intent. Zhu Wu Axian felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. He was so nervous that he could only stare at the girl's approaching face and clench his fists tightly, waiting for her to continue. You want to explain, right? All right, I'll give you a chance. She stood 3 steps away from Zhu Wu Axian. Then, she raised her eyes and stared straight into his eyes. Zhu Wu Axian's heart skipped a beat again. Do you dare look me in the eye and tell me that your appearance today is not a coincidence, but an accident? Zhu Wu Axian's eyes darkened. Even his cold face was covered with a layer of frost. This reaction. Even if he didn't answer. Yiqing Luo had already gotten her answer. She sneered and looked at Zhu Wu Axian. She couldn't help but laugh. Zhu Wu Axian, if you really want to lie to me, you should lie to the end. I want to lie to you. Zhu Wu Axian's expression was gloomy and cold as his eyes stared deadly at Yiqing Luo, as a whirlpool appeared in between his brows, but I know that the minute I really lie to you, you will really become a stranger to me. Emman, it's not fake. Yiqing Luo smiled. Her smile was gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. Chapter 39:11. It wasn't fake. Which meant, no matter what his answer was, like strangers, these 4 words couldn't be fake. Zhu Wu Axian's heartstrings quivered. He thought. After Yiqing Luo found out that he had imprisoned her for half a month, she wasn't too angry and still treated him the same as before. He thought. Yiqing Luo wouldn't blame him. But he had never expected Yiqing Luo to be so resolute. So resolute that when he intended to do it for the second time, she would not hesitate to cut off all relations with him. His heart, as compared to the first time he met her, was even more painful from her cold attitude and when she totally didn't recognize him. It was so painful that he was about to die. He thought. He was already numb and no matter how painful it was, he could maintain his calmness, to stand calmly in front of Yiqing Luo and continue his stubbornness. But the feeling now proved that his thought was really just a thought. His heart would hurt. When he met with the young lady's icy cold gaze, his heart would surge with waves. Not to mention standing in front of her. Now, he only had the urge to escape from her accusing gaze. Zhu Wu Axian, you're still working with the secluded palace, right? You want to help the secluded palace to deal with the people around me, right? Even when Yiqing Luo saw his cold face, that complicated and painful expression, she didn't let him off. She was still overbearing. The imposing manner became more and more pressing. The expression on Zhu Wu Axian's face became even more conflicted. He moved his thin lips and his voice sounded a little hoarse. No. It's not like that, He wanted to explain but when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he licked his dry lips and stopped the words from leaving his mouth. Immediately after, his thin lips pursed, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo waited for a moment and on seeing him maintaining his silence, her lips curled into a sneer of ridicule. Explain, I'm not being unreasonable. If you don't want to listen to your explanation, I'll give you a chance to explain. Zhu Wu Axian continued to stare at her without blinking, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo's gaze towards him became even colder. Since you're not going to explain, then I'll speak according to my understanding. Her brows rose as her tone was filled with ridicule. Do you think that after breaking my wings, I can only choose to rely on you? Ha, Zhu Wu Axian, do you think I'm such a person? No. Light flickered in Zhu Wu Axian's eyes, and he wanted to answer. However, he still held back and did not say it out loud. If Yiqing Luo was that kind of person, he would absolutely not take another look at her. But it was precisely because he knew this. He wanted to see even more, after Yi Qing Luo lost everything? What would they become? At that time, would his obsession still be as deep as it was now? Zhu Wuxin, just give up. Even if you want to break my wings, even if you want to separate me and Xian. This lifetime, the next lifetime, the next lifetime, no matter how long it takes. I, Yi Qing Luo, will never choose you. Yi Qing Luo's voice was cold and ruthless. The sonorous voice was like a huge hammer that landed heavily on Zhu Wuxin's heart. Zhu Wuxian's body shook violently. He flicked his sleeves. A cool breeze swept past. Several sharp sounds of wind could be heard in the air. The red figure had already disappeared before his eyes. In her resolute words, Zhu Wuxin fled in panic. Yi Qing Luo was expressionless, as though she had no emotions towards his escape. Only after she was sure that Zhu Wuxian's presence had completely disappeared. Chapter 39:12. The young lady's face was pale and there was no longer that overbearing aura from earlier on. Her petite body was caught by someone. Tightly, she was brought into a warm and spacious embrace. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's voice was filled with anxiety and worry. Yi Qing Luo wanted to open her eyes and smile at him to reassure him. But the minute she opened her eyes, it was a patch of blood color before her eyes which immediately turned into a patch of pitch black. She was unable to open her eyes. The dizziness in her head made her lose the ability to think. Finally, under Dmo Xian's gentle and affectionate call of Lil Luo, she completely lost all consciousness. Lil Luo, Sensing the change in Yi Qing Luo's breathing, Dmo Xian's voice suddenly rose as his shimmering eyes stared intently at the person in his arms. After checking the young lady's pulse, Dmo Xian's expression turned darker. His fingers clenched tightly as he gritted his teeth and spat out 3 words, Zhu Wu Xian. Damn that Zhu Wu Xian. No matter if Lil Luo, would forgive Zhu Wu Xian. He would absolutely not forgive her. Dmo Xian tightened his arms as he raised his voice and called out in a low voice, Xian, Biyuan. 2 figures, one tall and one short, appeared in the night sky. Guard this place, don't let other blind things come near. Dmo Xian instructed and carried Yi Qing Luo as he flew away. Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the direction where Dmo Xian left, watching his figure disappear completely. She then regained her senses as she slowly stood up. The man on the side was tall and imposing, with a handsome face, but his brows were rigid and solemn. The man's vision had been on Tang Beiyuan. Seeing that she stood up and was still in a daze, he comforted her, Madam will be fine. Hearing the man's voice, Tang Beiyuan's eyelashes fluttered. When she raised her head, her lips curled into a smile, Amen, I know. With the overlord around, Madam will definitely be fine. She had seen with her own eyes how much her master cared about Yi Qing Luo. Her daze wasn't because she was worried about Yi Qing Luo, but very envious. Envious of the relationship between the overlord and Madam. No matter what time it was, it would always make one laugh unknowingly. As for her, even though her fiancé was by her side, he could even touch it with his hand. However, she still felt as if they were thousands of miles apart and out of reach. Tang Beiyuan lowered her eyes and the smile on her face disappeared. Yuan, The man sensed that Tang Beiyuan was upset. He raised his hand and placed it on her shoulder in confusion. What's wrong? Tang Beiyuan raised her head and stared blankly at Langley Xian, who was a head taller than her. Soon, a smile appeared on his face. I'm fine. Langley Xian caressed her face and didn't ask any more questions. The man wiped his face with his slightly cold hand. Tang Beiyuan instinctively reached out and grabbed his hand. Langley Xian was startled and looked at her doubtfully. Tang Beiyuan gritted her teeth, mustered up her courage, and placed the man's hand on her waist. Then she turned around and hooked her arms around his neck. It's been a long time since we've been this close. To be more precise, it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Every time they met, it was just a hurried glance. After that, they would leave in a hurry. Not to mention a hug to feel each other's warmth. There wasn't even a chance to greet each other. Chapter 39:13. Langley Xian had just finished his words when he used his actions to express his attitude. He pulled Tang Beiyuan's hand away and widened the distance between the both of them. Immediately after, he leapt up the wall in the dark and his entire figure was hidden in the darkness. Tang Beiyuan stood in a daze on the spot. The hands which were pulled away by the man were still hanging stiffly in the air. After some time, he slowly retracted his hands. There seemed to be a man's touch on her wrists. There seemed to be a man's scent in her nose. Tang Beiyuan's lips suddenly twitched as she gave a soft laugh. She turned her head and walked towards the other side of the wall. Hiding in the dark with the man on the left and right. And completely hiding the sparkling eyes which flashed past her eyes. Qiao Residence. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo back to the room. His fiery appearance was accompanied by a powerful pressure. It made those who had just returned to the Qiao residence ran out of the room in shock. It was so late at night, this was very scary all right. They thought that the secluded palace had made a comeback. But after seeing the unconscious Yiqing Luo, everyone couldn't stand still as they flocked over. Kitty Lee was carried out from Zomo's arms and she was still rubbing her eyes sleepily, but when she saw Yiqing Luo being placed on the bed, her eyes suddenly opened wide. She scurried out of Zomo's arms and pounced towards the bed. Sister. What happened to sister? What happened to her? Kitty Lee held Yiqing Luo's hand but realized that her hand was ice cold. Old Lai didn't feel well, earlier at the Treasures Exchange Hall, wasn't she still fine? How long has it been? In his impression, Yiqing Luo and the Overlord were on the same level of abnormality. No one could hurt her. So on the way back to the Qiao residence, they didn't specially wait for Yiqing Luo. No one had expected. It was such a coincidence. Yiqing Luo was coincidentally injured. Gue Wu stood in the crowd as he frowned slightly. Apparently, he was puzzled over why Yiqing Luo was injured and was carried back by Dmo Xian. She's fine. Among the many concerned voices, Dmo Xian's slightly hoarse voice rang. He also successfully suppressed the voices of those who were talking at once. Dmo Xian sat on the bedside. Kitty Lee looked at Dmo Xian and then at Yiqing Luo. Under Zomo's tugging, he reluctantly let go of Yiqing Luo's hand and gave up his position to Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian held Yiqing Luo's hand, using his broad palm to warm Yiqing Luo's hand as he continued to speak calmly. I'm here, everyone, don't worry. Everyone turned pale and wanted to ask more questions. But looking at Dmo Xian's expression, however, none of them dared to ask. In the end, Gue Wu took the lead and walked out of the room. Only then did the others leave the room one after another, looking back every few steps. After closing the door, Kitty Lee pursed her lips. She grabbed Zomo's hand with displeasure and worry, pinching it from time to time. What's wrong with my sister? Dizun and brother-in-law didn't say anything. How can I be at ease? The Overlord is more worried about her than any of us. Zomo caressed Kitty Lee's head. Since the Overlord says it's fine, then Xiao Qing Luo will be fine. Qing Luo she. Suddenly, a soft but emotionless voice was heard from the crowd. Everyone's gazes turned towards the direction of the voice. Chapter 39:14. Drugged unconscious. What kind of joke was that? Yi-Ching Luo, that kind of pervert. She was a top-tier alchemist. How could she be drugged unconscious? It's the truth. Mo Yuing blinked her empty eyes and repeated seriously, "You can ask her when she wakes up." Looking at the little loli's serious look, everyone was still in disbelief. After all, drugging had always been Yi-Ching Luo's specialty. "I believe you." Suddenly, a deep voice was heard. Qiao Yinyan had appeared at the corner of the long corridor and was slowly walking towards their direction. The moment Qiao Yinyan appeared, everyone stopped their discussion. The man walked slowly to Mo Yuing. His gaze was deep like the sea and his silver hair hung down his cheeks, adding a mysterious and noble feeling to the man. Mo Yuing raised her head and blinked as she looked at the approaching figure. The aura from the man made her heart, or rather, her soul, had a restless feeling. It was very uncomfortable and she didn't like this feeling. She wanted to avoid it. But Qiao Yinyan seemed to see through her thoughts as he stretched out his hand and blocked in front of her. The man's gaze was burning, as if he could see through Mo Yuing's soul. "You have always been sensitive to the people you care about and can easily see the condition of others. This point. You still haven't changed." Mo Yuing's brows were tightly knitted together as she looked at him with her empty eyes. However, his pupils were not focused at all, and there was not the slightest bit of spirit in them. When these eyes looked over, for a moment, it made one feel that this pair of eyes were already blind. Anyone who was stared at by such empty eyes for a long time would have a creepy feeling. However, Qiao Yinyan met her gaze and gently curved his thin lips. He smiled and said, "Even your expression of disgust hasn't changed." Mo Yuing's stiff expression loosened for a moment. When the others heard this sweet, cloying words, all of them rubbed their arms. How did Qiao Yinyan see the bored expression on Mo Yuing's face? That was obviously expressionless, okay? That was what everyone thought in their hearts. But as the person involved, Mo Yuing was shocked. She had always been unable to express her emotions. Her face was stiff. His eyes were lifeless. Even his voice was completely emotionless. In addition, she couldn't even express ordinary emotions. Even a sensitive lady like Yi-Ching Luo would not be able to detect her emotions. This man in front of him, yet he could see through her heart so easily. Could it be that she really knew him before? After Lin Mingya invited him out of the room, the chatter outside the door continued. Dmo Xian looked at the unconscious young girl. His fingertips covered the young girl's slightly furrowed brows and gently smoothed her brows. Then, with a flick of his sleeve, an invisible wave spread out in the room, forming an oval transparent barrier that enveloped the entire room. It also successfully blocked out the noisy discussion outside the door. He held the girl's cold hand tightly, one hand on his cheek and the other on his mouth to warm it. His peerless face was filled with a peaceful expression of pampering. There was not the slightest hint of anxiety or unease. He wasn't worried that this medicine would cause any harm or influence to Yi-Ching Luo. Because this was the medicine which Zhu Wu Axian had given to Yi-Ching Luo. Even if Zhu Wu Axian was working together with the secluded palace, he would absolutely not hurt Yi-Ching Luo. Chapter 39:15. But he was unable to ascertain when Yi-Ching Luo would wake up. Dmo Xian's eyes were fixated on the young lady's peaceful sleeping face without blinking. Her eyes were calm, pure and beautiful. But that pair of icy cold hands couldn't be warmed up no matter what. His broad palm closed over one of her small hands. The other hand stretched out his slender fingers, gently caressing the young lady's icy cold but peaceful facial features. After gazing at it for some time, he sighed softly. Straightening himself, he took off his coat. Lifting up a corner of the blanket, he burrowed into it. Even though she was covered in the blanket, the young lady's body was still icy cold. Dmo Xian laid on one side, his arms scooped the young lady into his arms. Using his own warmth, he enveloped the young lady completely. If it wasn't for the fact that the young lady's breathing was smooth and her pulse was steady. This icy cold touch. It was indeed very scary. The person in his arms seemed to have felt the source of warmth. Her little body shrunk into the man's arms. Her peaceful little face revealed a blissful and satisfied smile. Dmo Xian placed his chin on her head. Feeling the person in his arms, infected with his warmth, his scent. The last time, in the Nirvana realm's passageway to the upper realm, he was careless and allowed Zhu Wu Axayan to snatch Lil Luo away. That was close to half a month's time. Lil Luo was imprisoned in such a state by Zhu Wu Axayan. This time. How long would Lil Luo sleep for? Yiqing Luo's head was groggy, as though she was being pressed down heavily by something. She was so exhausted that she couldn't even move a muscle. She creased her brows in pain. She wanted to raise her hand to rub her temples. But her arms were stiff and so heavy that she couldn't lift them at all. She struggled to open her heavy eyes, trying to see clearly what was going on with her. But when she opened her eyes, the surroundings were all white and there was nothing at all. Deathly silence. Where was this? Why was she here? She remembered. She sensed that something was wrong with Zhu Wu Axayan and wanted to leave. But Zhu Wu Axayan stretched out his hand and pulled her. There was a strange smell coming from Zhu Wu Axayan's body. That smell. It was a knockout drug that could make a person unconscious. However, even if she reacted, she would not be able to. However, he still couldn't help but smell that scent. In the end, she seemed to have held on till Zhu Wu Axayan left and she fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Yes. Ah Xian. Wasn't she in Ah Xian's arms? That was absolute safety. Why did she suddenly appear here? And it's so uncomfortable. Yiqing Luo's mind was filled with doubts but was unable to get an answer. Just then, the vast expanse of whiteness in front of him suddenly dispersed. Then, a 10,000 feet tall cliff appeared in front of him. She didn't have time to react to what was going on. Suddenly, his body, which was so heavy that he couldn't move at all, fell down the cliff at an extremely fast speed. It was extremely fast. Yiqing Luo could feel the sharp wind, like a knife, cutting her skin. The wind whistled past her ears, irritating her eardrums. She wanted to resist. However, his stiff body was unable to move. He took a deep breath to alleviate the pressure of falling. There was a sharp pain in her heart, causing her to be unable to concentrate. His body continued to fall, and continued to fall. It was like a bottomless abyss. No matter what, he couldn't touch the end point. Yiqing Luo tried her best to concentrate, as her vision suddenly fixed on a certain spot. Not too far away from her. An illusory figure was faintly discernible. Even though her falling speed was extremely fast. But that figure was still firmly fixed in her pupils. QQ Readings Character Ranking. May I trouble my babies to help me make a heart sign and label them. Not hoping to charge into the top 40, but to be able to maintain within the top 100. Chapter 39:16. Who was that? Yiqing Luo widened her eyes, trying to see the true face of that figure. However, the speed at which she was falling caused her eyes to be half open and blurry. Plus that figure seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of white mist, illusory, making that figure look like an immortal, extremely mysterious. Yiqing Luo saw it even more unreal. Just as she was feeling bewildered, that figure suddenly moved, her wrist lifted lightly, the gauze slid down, revealing her fair wrist. Her slender fingers were as smooth as jade, and there was even a thin layer of pale velvet light lingering around them. Every move, it seemed to draw out a white ray, sweeping past Yiqing Luo's eyes. In her ear, she could faintly hear an inaudible gentle voice, "Child, close your eyes." That voice, gentle like the wind, seeped into her heart from her eardrums. Not knowing why, Yiqing Luo's heart actually had a kind of twitching feeling. It was as if he had been tightly gripped by an ice-cold palm. Made her breathing become tight. Almost like a physical instinct. She listened to that voice, closed her eyes. Which was the moment she closed her eyes, Yiqing Luo seemed to see that white ray, as fast as lightning, heading straight for her face. She couldn't react in time. Her brain suddenly flooded with a large piece of complex and obscure totem. Large piece after large piece, quickly eroding her brain. Her brain immediately seemed to be squeezed by these totem, about to explode. She wanted to hug her headache and groan. But her whole body seemed to be imprisoned by a strong force, unable to move. Not knowing if it was an illusion. The moment she closed her eyes, Lin Sanjia smiled. Her body seemed to have stopped falling, suspended in midair. Ugh! A painful groan came from her nose. The totem continued to surge, constantly converging towards her heart. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo felt a scorching heat in her heart. No! More accurately, it was the profound jade heart. A burst of scorching feeling hit her heart. Following that, there was a strange aura, surging around the profound jade heart. That aura was extremely unfamiliar. It didn't seem like the profound energy she was familiar with. What was going on? What on earth was this aura? What surprised Yiqing Luo the most was her body, after coming into contact with this unfamiliar aura. There was no resistance at all. Instead, it was like an open mouth greedily absorbing this strange and unfamiliar aura. This was the first time she had encountered such a strange situation. Yiqing Luo was startled and wanted to control her profound heart jade to prevent that unfamiliar qi from entering her body. However, there was resistance. The profound jade heart in his chest began to let out a sharp pain in protest. Her face instantly turned pale from the pain. She endured the pain with great difficulty. He quickly released his dark force to probe the strange aura in his body. However, the instant her profound energy intertwined with the unfamiliar aura, his profound energy actually took the initiative to entangle that aura. Yiqing Luo, what the hell was going on? She wanted to get in touch with old man Tsang and ask him what was going on. But he didn't have time to connect his mental power with the azure dew bracelet. The profound heart jade suddenly sank again. The tearing pain once again messed up Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Relax, don't resist, follow your body's instincts, accept it. That gentle voice once again sounded beside her ear. Like a spring breeze, it soothed the sharp pain in her heart. Chapter 39:17. Her heart had loosened at this moment, which also gave that unfamiliar aura a chance. That unfamiliar stream of air quickly rushed into the profound jade heart. Like a scorching fire, a scorching heat was rampaging within her profound jade heart. Again and again, it collided against her profound jade heart. This feeling was simply unspeakably bitter. But Yiqing Luo didn't even have a chance to resist. She could only forcefully endure this unfamiliar airflow's collision with her profound jade heart, which brought about a sharp pain and a feeling of being squeezed by something. The profound energy and airflow intertwined, spreading to her limbs and bones. The two energies intertwined within her body. From time to time, it was still like calm stagnant water, like ice, so cold that it made one shiver. And from time to time, it was like a stormy sea, surging unceasingly, like a raging fire burning. The feeling of sometimes cold, sometimes hot. It made Yiqing Luo really felt that she was about to expand with the heat and contract with the cold, and then explode with a bang. The two energies were still merging together. Yiqing Luo, who was suffering from the torment, seemed to be able to see the two energies surging within her body, forming a huge storm within. The two energies, in the midst of intertwining and merging, became more and more vigorous. She even heard her own body, under the envelopment of the energy, emitting a kacha-kacha sound. Her bones seemed to be torn into pieces by these two energies. Yiqing Luo felt that this was a feeling of the bones and limbs in her body being reconstructed. Just at this moment, her throat finally seemed to have opened up, as she opened her mouth to let out a painful roar. Her hands suddenly clenched tightly. Boundless energy converged on her arms. The air trembled. She felt a strong and overbearing profound energy flying out from her arms. Bang bang bang, deafening explosive sounds resounded all around. Yiqing Luo swiftly opened her eyes. The profound energy encircling her body swept out even more violently. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes, looking at her own body. That energy that was restraining her seemed to have been shaken off by her earlier. Her entire body was light, like a feather. Just a slight movement. His body, which was falling from the sky, stood firmly on the vast expanse of white nothingness. Yiqing Luo's first reaction was to search for that figure that she saw earlier. But no matter how she looked around, she had never realized that there was someone else besides her in this vast expanse of whiteness. Silence reigned. It was lifeless. In Yiqing Luo's mind, the image of that figure earlier appeared, as he whispered beside her ear. That figure was slender and soft. That voice was as gentle as water. It gave her a very familiar and intimate feeling. He thought about it carefully. His heart suddenly tightened. It was as if he was being pricked by a needle. She slowly lowered her arms. The energy surrounding his body was still circling around excitedly. Until now, what else did Yiqing Luo not understand? That figure was helping her reconstruct her body. After being cleansed by the marrow cleansing pill, her bones also started to reform. His entire body seemed to be filled with boundless power. That figure, he was helping her. But why? Yiqing Luo couldn't understand. Suddenly, her ears twitched and she raised her head. In the vast expanse of whiteness, a huge palm stretched out. That hand pressed down on her. F***CK. What the hell is that? Yiqing Luo was about to evade. But that huge palm accurately wrapped around her. It was like Buddha's five-finger mountain, firmly imprisoning her. But it was only at this moment when she was imprisoned. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes blinked as her struggling movement stopped. Chapter 39:18. Ah Xian's hand. What on earth was going on? When that large palm had completely wrapped her up, Yiqing Luo felt the rampant clamor in her body. The surging energy seemed to have been appeased as it settled down in her body. Following that, a man's mellow voice was heard from all directions. Gentle and affectionate, calling her name over and over again. Lil Luo, Lil Luo, Lil Luo, That call seemed to be filled with endless warmth and sweetness. Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to be touched by something. Following that large palm which was covering her body suddenly tightened. Her body also felt a huge pulling force. Bam! A buzzing sound rang beside her ear. The pulling force disappeared. It turned into the feeling of falling rapidly from a high altitude. The next moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and sat up with a whoosh. She opened her eyes wide as she looked straight ahead, panting heavily. Her body still had the feeling of falling. But what entered her eyes was a white gauze curtain with a few white tassels hanging down. It was no longer a vast expanse of whiteness. It was no longer endless silence. This place was not that lifeless place earlier. Yiqing Luo was just about to move. Her sides suddenly leaned against a warm and thick chest. Her petite body was stained with warmth. The man's long arm held her tightly in his embrace, as though he couldn't wait to rub her into his body. Lil Luo, you're finally awake. That voice in the vast expanse of whiteness was completely compatible with that voice, as it rang beside her ear at a close distance. A familiar smell. A familiar warmth. A familiar voice. It made Yiqing Luo's consciousness gradually return. Her long curly eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly she stretched out both hands and hugged the man in front of her, Xian. She opened her mouth. Her throat felt like it was on fire, as it was hoarse. Spitting out 2 words, her throat felt as though it was cut by a knife, as the pain was unbearable. The man immediately retreated for a while, as he raised his hand to bring up the warm water beside him. Yiqing Luo was about to take the water. But her chin was suddenly lifted by a slender finger. When he raised his head, he saw a face of peerless elegance magnifying in his eyes. The man's deep, black eyes were filled with love. The distance between the two was getting shorter and shorter. She was so close that she could even see the ripples in the man's eyes. She could even count the man's dense and long eyelashes one by one. The next moment, a wave of warmth and softness pressed against him. The warm water poured into her mouth. The water ran down his throat. It also alleviated the burning sensation in her throat. The man left her lips again. Yiqing Luo blushed slightly. You. Just as he opened his mouth, he spat out a word. Then, the man's lips pressed against hers again. One mouthful after another. He poured a cup of warm water into Yiqing Luo's mouth. The man put down the cup and held her in his arms again. The warmth and taste of the man still lingered in her mouth. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were dyed red. Shy. Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, as he gave an evil smile. Yiqing Luo's little hand grabbed his robe, as she tugged hard, but didn't say a word, using her actions to express her unhappiness. The man smiled even more happily. When you were unconscious, I had been feeding you water like this. I'm already used to it, why be shy? Yiqing Luo's face turned even redder. Chapter 39:19. The man put on a serious look, used to it, the body's reflex action. Yiqing Luo buried herself in his arms as she rolled her eyes. How many days have I been unconscious for? 2 days. Dmo Xian replied. 2 days. She thought she had been unconscious for 2 months. Which made Dmo Xian's body's reflex action. As though he saw through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Dmo Xian held her little body as he brought her into his arms. The young lady's body left the bed and was brought into the man's arms. Immediately after, he lowered his head and whispered softly in her ear, used to taking care of you, this is my lifetime's habit. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly. She was touched. And there was also the man who intentionally blew past her ear, like a feather, tickling her heartstrings. Even though they had shared the same bed for such a long time. Even when facing Dmo Xian. She still couldn't help but blush and palpitate, unable to resist the temptation of Dmo Xian. The young lady avoided his playful lips as she stuffed her head into his shoulder, coughing lightly as she changed the topic. I remember. Wasn't I knocked out by Zhu Huaxian's drug? Why did I wake up so quickly? Previously at Zhu Huaxian's place. Hadn't she been unconscious for nearly half a month? Moreover, she didn't notice it at all. This time, it was totally different. Recalling that vast expanse of whiteness earlier, and that mysterious figure, gentle voice, and the change in her body's bones. She kept all these memories. Totally different from the last time. The minute she woke up, she only remembered what happened in the upper realms passageway. Because you're too restless, so I forcefully woke you up. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he looked at the person in his arms. The young lady buried her neck into his shoulder, revealing a fair neck, as though it was glowing. The dazzling whiteness made his gaze dim slightly. The arm which held the young lady's slender body tightened a little. Yiqing Luo didn't notice that the man's gaze on her had changed. After she heard the man's words, she even rubbed her head against the man's chest a few times before raising her head and stared at him. I'm very restless when I sleep. Restless. The man gazed at her with his deep eyes, and even his voice became deeper and sexier. You'll only be so tired when you sleep with me. Tired to the point of being content. How would Yiqing Luo not understand his hint? A scorching gaze. It was a deep and magnetic voice. And those words that made people blush. All of them made the young girl's heart beat as if it was tired. Her face was so hot that even her body was heating up. Her beautiful face was dyed red. It was like a slowly blooming rose, captivating the soul to the extreme. Dmo Xian abruptly tightened his arms. He was afraid that if he looked at this face that could make his heart flutter, he would be unable to control himself from wanting to hold her tightly in his arms. He hugged her tightly and said, "These 2 days, you have indeed been restless. Sometimes, your body is cold, and sometimes, it feels like it's burning. You even let out painful cries from time to time, as if you're in a deep sleep and in extreme pain. So, I can only enter your consciousness and wake you up. Infiltrate my consciousness." Yiqing Luo recalled that the last thing she remembered was a huge palm floating down from the sky, imprisoning her. It was indeed because of Dmo Xian that she woke up from that vast expanse of whiteness. But what Yiqing Luo didn't know was, although Dmo Xian's words were spoken in a light tone, but the truth was, in these 2 days of deep sleep, Chapter 39-20. These 2 days had practically tortured him to the point of insanity. He was on the verge of collapse. Watching Yiqing Luo howling in pain in her sleep. Looking at Yiqing Luo's alternating between cold and hot, the agonizing look. He was powerless to solve this problem. Especially after hearing that old man Tsang was unable to get in touch with Yiqing Luo. It was like an invisible force, completely isolating Yiqing Luo from the outside world. Dmo Xian's heart was even more restless. Fortunately, Lil Luo woke up. This was the method that old man Tsang had taught him. Sneaking into Yiqing Luo's consciousness space, he brought her out from within. However, the dangers involved. He didn't intend to let Yiqing Luo know. As long as his little Luo woke up safely and returned to his side, that was enough. She could feel the slight ups and downs of the man's emotions. And the strength of his hands tightening. Yiqing Luo's chin rubbed against the man's chest. Then, she raised her head and smiled at the man's chin. Both hands also tightly encircle the man's waist. She knew what Dmo Xian was feeling right now. She also knew how Dmo Xian felt these 2 days. "Don't worry, I'm awake. I'm back. Am I not in your arms now?" The girl's soft voice was like a cat's paw, tickling the man's heart little by little. The girl's posture and angle, he could clearly see the young girl's exquisite face in the deepest part of his heart. His pupils suddenly shrank. He could vaguely see a dim stream of light moving about. In the next instant, the man raised his hand and pressed it against the back of the girl's head. "Bend over, lower your head." His thin lips pressed against the girl's lips. This kiss. It wasn't as simple as crossing the water like before. Instead, it was a fierce and passionate kiss. A man's elegant sandalwood scent filled her nose. It was as if he could knock her out at any time. Their lips were slightly cold. Everything was heating up. This kiss was domineering and filled with his wild aura. However, her movements were extremely gentle. His hands slowly wrapped around her slender waist. His palms were pressed against her waist, moving around incessantly. Ah Xian, Yiqing Luo couldn't catch her breath as she laid in the man's arms. Her hand that was holding onto the man's clothes lost its strength. Until Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened. Only then did the man release her. He hugged her tightly with both hands. His chin rested on the girl's slender shoulder, and his husky voice carried a hint of ambiguity. "Be good, just let me hug you." His voice was deep and magnetic. The elegant sandalwood fragrance had almost confused Yiqing Luo's consciousness. Especially that peerless beauty, the most bewitching face, which was so close to him. Yiqing Luo totally had no resistance at all as she sank into the beauty. The man's deep voice was slightly panting. It was very seductive. However, the man just hugged her obediently. How would Yiqing Luo not know that Dmo Xian was forcefully suppressing his desire for her? This man, although he usually flirted with her, took advantage of her, and said embarrassing things to her. But no matter what, she was the center of everything he did. No matter how uncomfortable he was only concerned about her. What a fool! Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a sweet and blissful smile. She raised her hand and cupped the man's cheek. The man's face was hot. Just when she touched him, she could clearly feel the slight stiffness in her palm. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.